Good morning and welcome to this Coordinators Day on Grant Agreement Preparation. My name is Manuel Romaris. I'm Training Coordinator for Horizon 2020, and today I will guide you through the different presentations that we have for this morning. We will have 3.5 hours. We hope to finish around 1 p.m. already. And there are 2 presentations before a small coffee break and 2 more presentations after the coffee break. Just immediately after the coffee break, I will introduce you a little bit, just for a few minutes, what the different trainings are. The trainings we organize on grant agreement preparation, on amendments and reports, what we call the Coordinators Day, and also the other trainings. So, just a few technical points. You will see that we will have questions after each presentation. So that means that there are different rooms in Slido. You can put your questions over there, but before, please check whether there is a similar question. If there is a similar question to yours, just like it, and we will go at the end of each presentation through the different questions in order of likes. Once the session is over for these specific presentations, we will forget about these presentations for the moment, and we will go to the next questions. So you cannot ask questions about a previous presentation. You have to ask questions for the present one. Don't worry. In any case, the questions, are not lost. In case you don't know, what we do is we tabulated all these questions. We send them to the different people who are making the presentation, the responsibles for each area. And what we do with them is that we feed the frequent asked questions part of the Funders and Tenders portal, Funding and Tenders portal. And also what we do is we use these questions to refine the processes that we are explaining to you. So nothing is lost. We have today people coming from the studio live. We are at the RTD studio, and people coming also speaking through Teams, actually, remotely from home or from their offices. So we will do a combination of both, and you will see, hopefully, that there is no difference whatsoever whether we are at the studio or they are at home. So the first presentation, it will be from the studio, is overview of the grant agreement preparation process, and that will be done by Petros Belsis. Petros is a colleague from the Commission, the Common Implementation Center, and he is the team leader for the grant sector. So Petros, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Manuel. Hello, and welcome to our Coordinators Day. As Manuel said, the first presentation concerns the overview of the grant agreement preparation, which is the first step immediately after the announcement of the results, the evaluation results. So for all the projects which have been positive, the evaluation, the next step is to be ready to sign the grant agreement. And this process we are going to see together. So we will start with some basics that concern the grant agreement preparation. We will show you in brief what are the necessary roles and configuration and what you need to configure in the tool in order to be able to work together with your colleagues and prepare the grant agreement. We will have a small section concerning some specific elements which apply for Horizon Europe, and they are necessary in order not to find any shortcomings before being ready to sign the grant agreement. And then we will have a very brief overview on some technical aspects in the tools. And of course, we have a second presentation that will follow up with detailed explanations concerning the technical aspects. And that will be given later today from my colleague Isabel. So here we can see an overview of the grant management life cycle. Some of the steps, maybe you have already, for those of you who are ready to sign the grant agreement, of course, you have already passed. Others who you are interested in and taking part, you will encounter them later. So after the call publication, and the submission and preparation of a proposal. The evaluation phase takes part, and then what we receive is what we call the ranking list, which is the, let's say, the top evaluated proposals. For the ones that are when this ranking list is totally approved, let's say when it is officially approved, then you receive the announcement, the letter, and then we are ready to sign what we call the grant agreement. There is a process that is not so lengthy, but concerning to the overall life cycle of the grant management, but it is very important for you because you need to do specific steps until you sign officially the grant agreement when it is put in action, and then it is valid. Until that moment, if something goes wrong, of course, you don't have yet a signed grant agreement. Of course, when it is signed, then there are other steps in the process that we consider equally important. It is the biggest part of the lifetime of the project, so we have the actual work, and then there are also some kind of intermediate, let's say, steps that we have to do some reporting. You submit the deliverables, and then there are also some kind of checks that we do, reviews that take part with the help of experts in order to ensure that everything is going well. But this we will cover in another presentation. We will have other events. When the projects are advanced, we will also cover the necessary, and also sometimes there are what we call amendments, which is a process that is necessary when there is a serious, let's say, change in the course of the project, or when there is a change in the data concerning a coordinator or something similar. So the basic principles before signing the grant agreement preparation. We have a deep integration between all the IT tools and services in the portal. This means that your single point of entry is the portal, the participant portal. There you can manage all the processes. You already have submitted your proposal. You have received the evaluation results. Now you will go there and prepare the grant agreement, the data that are necessary in order to sign the grant agreement. Later you will submit your deliverables. You will also be able to manage the reporting or contact your counterpart, which is the commission, your project officer. What we have aimed to do is to have a uniform experience. So all the tools, they are interconnected. Sometimes there is changes between the tools, but it is transparent to you. So even if you are transferred in another tool to, for example, to submit your reports, or you are, for example, managing the data for your organization, for you this process is transparent. You just click in the links in the portal, and then the interface changes, but even if there is another tool behind it, it is totally transparent for you, and the experience is similar. The processes behind it, we have also the same rules that apply, so you don't encounter a different experience. You also have to apply the same rules, and we have established the processes and designed them in a common way so that you don't encounter any, let's say, different or problematic behavior. Another basic principle is that we have established all the necessary signatures. They are managed electronically, so you don't need anymore to provide what we call blue ink signature, so you don't need to sign the document and upload it. Of course, there is a small, let's say, a clarification we need to do this. This is supported only for those roles which have access to the portal. For example, if you are an affiliated entity, a linked third party, what we used to call, in that case, because you don't have access, it is the counterpart, the beneficiary that you are linked to, that needs to do it. So it's a small exception, but it is due because you don't have directly, if you are a linked party, you don't have direct access to the portal. All the others, the beneficiaries, all the people who have access to the portal and have a specific role in the project, they sign always electronically. The documents are always sealed, so once they are signed, they receive a timestamp, they also receive an official stamp, and they cannot be altered anymore. We have a common repository. You will see in a little later in the interface. So we have a common repository. All the documents are there. All the processes are archived, the ones which are for a long time, let's say, pending, and then so that you can always have the most recent ones and the ones that are active. And we also have enforced full traceability. So we see who signed and when. This is also very important because we will show you need to assign proper roles to different persons. You don't need to reuse also the same account because this is especially essential when we need to see who signed something. Also, all the rules which are according to the program, the participation in the program, they are also applied through business rules in the tools, and then you can always have, you receive always a notification if something is not, let's say, for the moment correct and you need to fix it. So the GAP, what we call, it is an acronym that you will meet, but okay, it is what we call the grant agreement preparation. So we will refer to it in short as GAP, but it is, of course, we're talking about the grant agreement preparation. So it is a well-defined process. It has a specific time frame, and then there are also legal, let's say, provisions behind it. What we have from the financial regulation of the Commission, we need to finish from the time the call closes, and then we have the submission of the proposals. We need to finish the signature of the grant agreements for the successful proposals in 8 months. So there is an intermediate part that takes 5 months, and it is also a challenging time frame to assess all the proposals which have been submitted for a call. And then we have the 3 remaining months to prepare the grant agreement and to sign it until the end of it so that we can match the time frame of these 8 months. There are some exceptions for the ARC actions, but okay, this, when you are taking part in these, let's say, calls, you will be receiving this information in the evaluation result letter that you receive. So what we need to make clear here is that you also need on your part to be reactive. So when the process starts to prepare the grant agreement, because we need both to work to respect the time frame, you also need to be reactive, and also when there is something that is unforeseen, you need immediately to notify the counterpart, the project officer from the Commission. And if necessary, you also need to come with a plan to overcome these shortcomings if they happen. So another, let's say, more specific only to the grant agreement time frame here. So once you receive the evaluation letter and you are also notified about the deadlines, then there is some work that you have to do. It is not, let's say, challenging. It is rather straightforward. You need to take some data from the proposal and start filling the tables that are relevant to the grant agreement. So this data, sometimes you need to take from the text that you have in the proposal, and you need to put it now in structured form. Well, this is necessary because when you submit the proposal, many of the proposals do not reach the final stage, and it takes more time to enter the data into these tables. So for that reason, the ones which are successful have to do some extra steps. So you need to encode the information that already exists in the proposal, and you need to fill correctly the necessary tables, and then you also need to do some adjustments, of course, in the part B, which is the non-structured part, but that you will see later in the presentation of Isabel. So the proposal the grant agreement starts by entering the data and preparing the tables that you will see, and then you can already submit a first, let's say, time for evaluation to the project officer. It can be an exchange of information. Then the project officer can start asking for something to be changed if necessary, until there could be 1 or 2 exchanges, and then you can finally sign the grant agreement. So both parties need to sign, both the coordinator and the Commission need to sign, and then it enters into action. You need also to take into account that sometimes, depending on the nature of the proposal, there can be ethics issues. And depending on let's say, how important these ethics issues are, sometimes it needs also to be discussed with the member states, so that can take more time. You need also to allow yourself not to use all the 3 months that we mentioned now, but sometimes you need also to allow to have 1 month at the end in case these ethics or security issues are present. Here we can see the basic steps in the grant agreement process. So the first step is, of course, you receive the evaluation result letter. It is the invitation that you receive to start the grant agreement preparation. Then the coordinator, which is the most, let's say, important role. I mean, this coordinator role, as it says the name also. So, and the beneficiaries, they need to start working and filling the respective tables. At the same time, the validation of the participants takes also place. Some may be already be validated if they have participated in the past in actions. Some others will need to provide to the validation service the necessary data and documents. A configuration needs to happen, so we need to assign roles to specific persons to start working, of course. And then before entering the data, the first step is to sign what we call the declaration of honor. Once this has been done, you fill the data, then you can already submit the first, let's say, iteration. The project officer, in case everything is okay, then we can go directly to the signature. But at the same time, on the background, there are some kind of controls that happen on our side. We need also to make sure that the necessary funds have been secured for you, because for all the duration of the project, and then the award decision is prepared. At the end of the process, first the coordinator signs in behalf of the consortium. The signature is also the counterpart of the commission that is signing the grant agreement. And then you need to have what we call the accession form, so the beneficiaries are, let's say, accepting also this signature that the coordinator has provided, and then the grant enters into action. We also can give you the pre-financing if and as defined in the grant agreement. So what we have also here, as it was in the previous framework program, is we have the no negotiation principle. What it means is we evaluate the projects based on their merit and not the potential. What this means? So we don't say this proposal is very nice, but it could be, let's say, accepted if you would do that. No. If you have said that all the things that you have mentioned in the proposal and you commit to them, then these are evaluated. We don't say that if the expert is proposing something and this would be done, that so this is what we call. We based on the merit and what you have already provided in your proposal. The grant agreement is also prepared based on the basis of what you submitted in the proposal and what was already evaluated. But since we say we don't require you to do changes in order to get the funding, this does not mean that no changes at all can be made. So there can be clerical errors. There can be sometimes requirements that the experts identified concerning ethics or security, in which case you are obliged to respect all these requirements. A removal of participant can happen. This is a more delicate case because you understand that if you have promised a participant and maybe if the role of this participant is very important, if you say later that this participant does not want to take part in the action, then of course we need to evaluate if there is a risk for the proposal, for the project, the proposal to become a project. And of course, if there is an obvious clerical error or inconsistency that is by mistake written, of course, that you are allowed to change. The fact that there is no negotiation does not mean that there is no control. So we have also on our side the means to check if we have anti-fraud checks and risk-based controls. We evaluate also the viability, the financial, and of the coordinator especially. You need also to take into consideration that non-compliance or breach of the applicable rules can lead to termination of the grant. And then even though it was accepted to be funded your proposal, then it risks. But of course, these are very minor cases, but we need also to say this. Now, let's say, except from accepting the proposal, preparing the data, you need to do specific actions and configure specific roles which will be participating in this grant agreement preparation process. So what we need, the minimum configuration. So we need to have at least one legal representative for each organization. We will have directly after this presentation, we will explain more on the process for the validation. Of course, the role of the primary coordinator contact is the most, let's say, centralized. It is the person who started the submission of the proposal, and it is the representative of the coordinator who can, at the end, who also signs the grant agreement on behalf of the consortium. We need also to have one participant contact per each beneficiary that takes part in the action. And then we'll explain a little later, you need also to have, per each organization, you need to have a specific person which is assigned by the LEAR, which has the capacity to sign legal documents, and the other one, the financial signatory, signs the financial documents on behalf of the consortium. So always, of course, the person who enters and is assigned the role, you need to go through the EU login, and the signature are electronic, as we already mentioned. So you can see here a little the overview with the roles. So the coordinator has the coordinator contact of the primary coordinator contact. Then for each beneficiary, we have a participant contact. The first thing you sign is the declaration of honor. So before starting, you need to sign the declaration of honor. You enter the data. They are reviewed by the project officer. Once they are ready, the legal signatory of the coordinator signs the grant agreement. The project officer countersigns, and at the end, you see that each legal signatory of each beneficiary need to sign the accession forms. So now, each program, each framework program has its specific rules, and also the Horizon Europe has some specific rules. What we will show here is a necessary action to be performed by the legal representative. So it is something that has to define specific things at organizational level, which are, though, very important because they can block you in the process. So you need to define some elements that we will explain here also in brief the process, because if you don't do them, then you risk being blocked before signing the grant agreement. So one of the requirements is for specific organizations, we need to ensure that they have what we call a gender equality plan. So this is a requirement that comes for Horizon Europe and concerns the organization. So it's not only for a specific project, specific organizations, and these type of organizations are public entities, ministries, public institutions, research, or whatever. All the public entities of the countries which participate, so it's member states plus associated countries, they need to have a gender equality plan. Also, research organizations, public or private, and higher education institutions, again, public or private. Again, we need to say that this concerns, of course, only beneficiaries, so not associated partners. It's only for beneficiaries, of course, which must be from the member states or the associated countries. So what you need to do in order, of course, you need first to read about it. There is information. We have also a document. It is at the site of the publication office. It's a very detailed. You can see examples what you have to do. But for us, before signing the grant agreement, we need to ensure that you have the gender equality plan in place. So you need to ask your LEAR to go in. Once you have it, you need to go to the participant portal, and then you see on the left side, you go in where it is my organization, or the LEAR, of course, has this. Then you select actions, modify the data of the organization, and then there is a tab which is called legal information. You select edit legal information, and then at the end it says manage the GEP, the gender equality plan. So you need to say yes. Then in the next step, there is a wizard. It has some specific questions. Of course, you need to read all the information. You need to define if you have a gender equality plan. And then there are specific questions. You need to ensure that you cover at least the first 4, the pillar questions, the basic ones. If you don't, and one of them is not, let's say, covered, then unfortunately, we cannot consider that you have a gender equality plan, and the question on the top will become no at the end. You cannot save it. There are also other 5 which are not mandatory, but of course, it is good if you could cover also your gender equality plan. You could cover also these, let's say, questions. So you need to ensure if you are one of these type of organizations before, let's say, going, because at the end, you can have problems with the time frame. So if you are one of these organization types, you need to ensure that you have a gender equality plan, and of course, declare it in the participant registry for your organization. Now, the second is the organizational status concerning international organizational status. So there is the generic type international organization. You need to always say if you are or not, no matter if it is obvious. We cannot define it for you. So your LEA needs to say I am in the international organization or I'm not. And in case you are not, or you have defined it in the past, we have a new, let's say, category, which is called the European Research Organization, International European Research Organization, or REA in short. And in that case, if you are already a European international organization, you need to tell us whether you cover also this, let's say, category. It is important, in any case, as I said, to say if you are an international organization or not, because there are specific rules which apply, and we need to see if you have set the status correctly. Just a short also here reminder, please, when you are in the portal, and it is here, of course, you will define if you are an international organization. You can just say no if you are not. In most of the cases, it is not. But then there are also important statuses, so please try to define all the information, no matter if it applies to you or not, because there are specific rules which concern public entities, for profit or anything. So you always need to have up to date all the information. And now, in brief, some technical aspects. I will not stay long because we have a more detailed presentation later by my colleague Isabel. So what is here the interface before preparing the grant agreement preparation? So you enter in the participant portal. Of course, you can see here you have my proposals that you submitted. Now you go to my projects because you already are starting to have a project. You select from the actions here, manage project. And then it takes you to this interface where we could just see an overview of the screen. So on the left, you have the overview, some data concerning the acronym of the proposal, the duration, the call that it was related to. Here below, you can see you have the latest legal data for the organizations. Processes which have been archived, so the ones that have been completed, so that you always have the ones that are more recent. You have a document library with all the documents concerning your project that you can access. The communication center, where you can have all the communications concerning your organization or the specific project, and archive projects. At the end, you have an online manual, which is, let's say, a web a wiki-based interface that has many questions concerning also several different processes, and an IT how-to, which is more specific for the tool. So it's not only the business process, but it's more IT issues concerning the portal and all the different processes. So here you see you can have a process, then it shows we have this kind of metro line. There is a part of it which is the active, and part what you have not reached yet. Okay, you have here a button that it's for very specific and limited cases. In case you want to terminate the grant agreement for any reason that you cannot fulfill the obligations or there is a serious link, you shouldn't try this unless you are really sure about it. This button is for the coordinator, so the coordinator will submit to the EU once the data are ready. And here you have the declaration of honor template that you also need to sign. So it's participant contact for its beneficiary will sign their own, and then the coordinator, of course, will sign and then sign the grant. Here, as you see, when you click at it, you are transferred. Okay, for you it is the same place, but there is another tool behind. So this is the grant management system. We have different tabs that you need to fill with the data. Well, I will not go into that because we have a detailed presentation later. The only thing that we would like to just mention here is that there is a let's say, there are different types of messages that you receive. If everything is completed and there is no error, you always get the green tick. If there is an X, it means that there is a blocking error, and then you can also have a warning, which is not blocking, but it could become. So once you have everything in green, you can always submit to the next step, proceed to the next step, or submit the grant agreement. So some points of attention. Please, when you transfer the data, but okay, that I will not also stay for long. I will not mention because we have a presentation. Please, when you transmit the data from the proposal to the tables, you need also to ensure that you don't have duplications. If you have ethics or security issues, you need to know that they are binding, and you need to do everything necessary before the grant is signed. You also need to be very careful and respect the deadlines, be reactive, because if, let's say, there are delays on behalf of, because of the beneficiary or the coordinator, it can result in not meeting the deadlines, and it can enter into dangerous paths. So be always transparent. If you have a problem, please try to contact the project officer, try to find a solution by contacting them. And of course, we are always here also. If there is something, you can always through the help desk, or they will address if there is a specific questions to us, and we will be always here to help you. So thank you for your time, and now we are looking forward to answering your questions.
Thank you very much, Petrus. You can join us here to reply the questions. We have already 14 questions, so we are going through almost all of them. And we are here with Isabel Vergara, who is the Deputy Head of Unit of Business Process Unit at the European Commission, dealing with Horizon Europe. So the first question, what is the official position of the Commission regarding ongoing grant agreement preparations with UK partners? Who wants to answer that?
Okay, maybe you, yes. Mm-hmm.
Yes, so for the time being, the United Kingdom is considered to be associated partner. So this has not changed. And this means that when you submit a proposal, if the proposal includes participants from the United Kingdom, they will be considered for the evaluation process as if they were associated. So they will count in the minimum requirements for the consortium composition, etc., etc. But we cannot sign the grant agreement until this association is finished. So the current position is that we will wait as much as possible to see if a proposal that has been invited to start grant agreement preparation includes a participant from the United Kingdom and wants funding from the project, so we will wait. But of course, we have also legal requirements. We have a time to grant to comply with, and we will wait until very close to this time to grant, and then if at that moment the association agreement of the United Kingdom is still in a process of discussion, we will ask you to take action. So we will ask you to whether these participants can become an associated partner to the project, so meaning that they can participate, but they cannot receive funding. They will also not sign the grant agreement. Or if this is not possible, so we will discuss other options, and this will be case by case.
Thank you very much, Isabel. Next question, I think, is for you, Petros. What is the recommendation of the Commission? Has gone.
I think it depends on the voting.
Yeah, but anyhow, what is the recommendation of the Commission about the consortium agreement, before or after grant signature?
I think they can sign even after, but this is not, we do not require to see the consortium agreement, so we don't have a limitation. I think they can sign it after the grant agreement.
Maybe I can complement. So in Horizon 2020, there was the obligation to sign the consortium agreement before the grant signatures. This obligation is not in Horizon Europe, But of course, it's something that is desirable. So before you sign a grant agreement, it's better that you have already put order between your consortia and sign this consortium agreement. But of course, we will not check this consortium agreement, and we will also not ask you whether this has been signed. Yeah.
Thank you both. Even if associated partners do not sign the grant agreement, will they have access to the portal during the implementation of the project?
No, we don't foresee that. I mean, the associated partners do not have access to the portal because they don't have a role. I mean, we give access only to, as we explained, because there are specific actions that need to be done, signatures. So unfortunately, associated partners, of course, there are also other things because they are not bound to the same extent like the beneficiaries, but they do not have access for legal reasons. It's not that we don't want to facilitate them.
Perfect, clear enough. Are affiliated entities obliged to have the gender equality plan?
No, because they don't sign the grant agreement. Of course, it is desirable, but they are not once they don't sign the grant agreement. Because actually for the beneficiaries, as we explained, or the coordinator, at least the ones which have the specific statuses, because what we check also in the participant portal is the type of organization. So if you are not a public entity, and not, for example, a higher education institution, you are not, I mean, if you are a small company, you are not obliged to have one. But if we see that you are a public entity, we check it. For affiliated entities, because they are not part of the list of beneficiaries, we don't have anything to check. So you will not be blocked. I mean, you are not even, let's say, in the list of, so we will not check. Of course, it is desirable if you would like to respect. It is a nice initiative. It's not that we do it, let's say, to punish anybody. We are just trying to enforce gender equality in all organizations. But we need to ensure it for the public ones.
Thank you. Could you please specify the ethics evaluation and how this fits into 3 months of gap?
Yes, maybe I can come in with this question. The ethics evaluation is part of the evaluation process. So we do it not for all proposals because this will be a lot of work for us and probably unnecessary. So we do it we start this process as soon as we have a first version of the ranking list after the evaluation. So we take those proposals that will be most likely to be funded, and then we start already before informing you of the results of the evaluation about this ethics process. So it's part of the evaluation process. In most of the cases, in most of the evaluations, we finish already the ethics review before sending the evaluation result letters. But it might be that for complex cases, we inform you before the finishing of the ethics review, and then you will receive the outcome of this review a bit later during the GAP process.
Thank you. What happens if the gender equality plan is not available during GAP? Should the entity be removed from the consortium?
Well, if you need to have one and you are there, you will see that it is a blocking error. So you will see in the list of beneficiaries, there will be a X next to, I mean, to the tab, to the overall tab. When you check the validation, you will see that there is an error. If you cannot acquire one until the signature of the grant, then perhaps, yes, I don't know. You cannot sign it without having it. I would say that it's better that you try to have it. We have informed already, yes, since 2 years, I think now that this will happen. We have given also, let's say, an extension. I mean, it was a grace period for 1 year. I believe you need to try to ensure that this is there for the ones that who should have it.
Isabel?
Maybe I can complement. So to have a gender equality plan for the type of organizations that Petros mentioned is an eligibility criterion. So of course you can, those entities that need to have this gender equality plan cannot participate in a project funded by Horizon Europe. It is an eligibility criterion that normally these eligibility criteria are checked during the evaluation, but we finally check this eligibility criterion during the GAP. So we wait until the last moment, just before the the grant signature to check whether you, the indicated type of organizations have this gender equality plan. So if these organizations do not have it, of course, they cannot participate. So, and of course, it is decided case by case, but we will ask the consortia to replace this participant because certainly because it is an eligibility criterion, it cannot participate. Yeah.
Just for information, next week on the 23rd afternoon, we have a training, a webinar on gender equality plan. If you want to follow it, you are most welcome, of course, and you can find the information in the news section of the Funding and Tenders portal. It's there is the link, and all the information is there. Please join us. So, next question. What happens if the, not this one. Can you give some examples of the issues that the program officer might identify during GAP, I imagine?
For example, it can be, I don't know, this is a very generic question, it can be anything, but for example, when you transfer the data from the proposal to filling the specific tables, for example, let's say the budget, you know, if there is a change that has not been foreseen, then of course there is they need to make a comparison, the project officer will make to what you declared in the proposal and what you have declared there. If let's say there is, I don't know, something else that is missing, the deliverables, it can be anything, let's say, of course, serious. As we said, you know, if you see that there is an obvious clerical error, some typos or anything, of course, it is not an issue. But we see cases where there are considerable, let's say, changes when you transfer the data. You can change. You cannot request more than what you have been, let's say, approved. But when the evaluation has happened, you cannot also, for example, change the beneficiaries. If this happens, of course, there is a serious issue. And as I said already, it can raise concerns if you can deliver the same things that you promised. So in that case, you need to be contacted and give replies.
Thank you. I think next question we have already answered. Are there any restriction on which role within an organization can be appointed leader?
I think, okay, there is a presentation next so that you can ask about the LEAR, but the LEAR is a very specific role, important one. It is always one person, so you need also to provide your identity card when you are going for the validation. It is the person who has been appointed by the management to officially represent and sign documents. Then the LEAR can delegate some of the tasks because, of course, in big organizations with many projects and many other tasks, it cannot be that one person handles all that. But the overall responsibility remains to the LEAR. So the REAL is a specific appointment to one person, but the LEAR can delegate tasks. So I don't know if this answered what kind of restriction you are talking about, but the LEAR needs to also to provide proof by the management of the organization. For example, if it is a university, then it is either the rector or the assembly that is managing the management board that needs to give an official attestation that we appoint this person as a LEAR. So apart from that, I don't know what else could be. I don't also know if there is something else in the question.
Thank you very much. How flexible is the deadline for the grant agreement signature? Is just for the coordinator to sign the commission or the accession, the signature of the accession form from the others?
I think it is everything, but of course, if it is the commission that has been delayed, it is the cause of the delay. Of course, you know, it is not your fault. I mean, what we try to emphasize is that you also need to be reactive. But we also have, let's say, means to see if there has been, let's say, if we reach the deadline or if we are above the deadline. In case the deadline has passed, of course, you know, I mean, it doesn't mean immediately. If it is that you have not reacted, of course, you know, there is something. If there are other reasons, there can be valid exceptions in in the rule, let's say this. It is, of course, a deadline that is fixed by the financial regulation, but if there has been some very specific reason that is explaining the delay, it doesn't mean that you will lose the project. What we try to emphasize is that if you don't react for 1-2 months and you miss the deadline, in that case, of course, we have a problem.
Isabel, you want to add something?
Yes, maybe to clarify that what we call time to grant is the complete signature of the grant agreement. So coordinator and also EU side. Yeah. The signature of the accession forms do not count to this time to grant. Yeah. So I think this clarifies.
Okay, thank you very much. Next question. In the first iteration, is it needed already? The questions are jumping, sorry.
Below it's the voting, let's say.
Yeah, so let's go now to in the first iteration, it is needed to fill the work programs, the deliverables, milestones, okay, and press submit. Is this expected only in further iterations?
I think maybe you can wait for the next presentation that we will show you in detail all the things that you need to fill. So I think it's maybe it will be answered. If you still have it, you can come again and ask very specific things.
I think that the next question about the peak is more for the following presentation. Do you want to address it or we leave it?
One second.
Yeah. Another question regarding the gender equality plan. Should not it already have been declared in the preparation of the proposal? Isabel, you want to answer that?
Yes, so indeed, because it is an eligibility criterion, it has to be already declared in the proposal. But as I mentioned before, we are not going to reject a proposal during the evaluation process because the gender equality plan was not in place yet. So we will check this eligibility criterion at the time we signed the contract during the GAN agreement preparation. So if we are close to the time to grant and a given participant has not declared yet a gender equality plan, so we will have to reject this participant, or even we will think about rejecting the whole proposal. And the reasons will be ineligibility because the gender equality plan was not present for one participant. Yeah. But this is case by case. Yeah.
Thank you very much. We go now to the last question because we are running out of time. Specific beneficiaries from member states and associated countries need the gender equality plan. A lot of interest about the gender equality plan, as you can see. Do also beneficiaries from middle-income countries automatically eligible for funding need to have a JEP?
No, it's desirable, right? Yeah, so this is something good to have. But the eligibility criterion only applies to participants from member states and associated countries. So it does not apply to third countries. Yeah.
Thank you very much, both of you. I see you later. You have one presentation, Isabel, and maybe Petros will be here for questions too. We will see. Okay. We will see if he's free.
Okay.
The next presentation, if you have questions about the PIC, is about the legal validation and financial capacity assessment. We have two speakers. One is from the studio, Pietro Samperi, and we have another speaker who is joining from Teams. Actually, he's home. Actually, thank you very much to him, Alberto Romero. He's home and he's ill. Thank you for coming here anyhow through the webinar. They are both working at the validation service at the REA, Research Executive Agency. And I think Pietro will start now. Is that you starting first?
Yes. Hello, good morning everyone. My name is Pietro Samperi. I work at the Central Validation Services in REA. And today, together with my colleague Alberto Romero Quisios, we will guide through the legal validation and the financial capacity assessment. Okay, so this is the presentation outline of our presentation today. So we will spend a few words regarding the REA Central Validation Services. So what do we do? And then we will talk about the registration of participants and the legal validation, so the legal existence and the legal status. the legal entity appointed representative, the so-called LEAR. Then my colleague Alberto will tell you everything you need to know about the financial capacity assessment, FCA. And at the end, we will give you some guidance documents that will be helpful for your validation process. So what do we do? What the Central Validation Service in REA do actually? So we verify the legal existence and the legal status of entities, so of your organization. We will see the difference between how we assess the legal existence and the different legal statuses. We validate the appointment of the legal entity appointed representative, the LEA. You've seen already in the previous presentation how important this role is. So we will explain in details how this validation is done. We validate all legal changes of validated entities. So all validated entities, if during their existence they have some important change in their legal status or their legal name, this will need to be communicated by the LEAR and validated by the Central Validation Services, but we will see more of this in detail later. We prepare the financial capacity assessment for the responsible authorizing officer. We perform third country control analysis, and we perform also ex post status verification. So for some data that are self-declared, we perform ex post verification, for example, SME or mid-cap status check. We assess universal takeovers of already validated entities. And we also create the bank account files and the legal files in cooperation with DigiBudget. This is a process overview, all the validation steps. So from the moment of the registration, we will go through all these steps. So from the registration and then the verification of the data declared by you in the portal, the appointment of the LEAR, which it's mandatory for all the participants that will be validated. And my colleague Alberto will explain the financial capacity assessment. So, sorry. Your entity needs to be, of course, before the submit a proposal, as you've seen before, needs to have to register in the funded data portal. So how this is done? You have to register in the participant register of the funded data portal. You can search for a registered organization. So first you can see if your organization has already a valid PIC, has already registered a PIC, or valid or non-valid. In you can see here, search a PIC. So you can search for a registered organization, and by entering some data of your organization, you can see if your organization has already a PIC number. If not, you register your organization as a new registration. Don't worry if even if your organization is already registered, there is another step for duplicate check. So doing your identification by providing your legal name, VAT number, already the system checks if you already has been registered in the portal. You will be requested to provide some organizational data, legal information, so the legal name, the legal form, the address, and also the authorizing users. This is very important. Authorizing users is the person who registered the organization in the portal. It's called self-registrant. And this is the person who, throughout the process of the validation process, will be in contact with us, with the validation Central Validation Services. So for any documents that will be needed, for any clarification, the self-registrant would be the person in contact with the validation services. So it's important to have a valid email address, an EU login. And what we recommend, and it also, when you register, you will see there will be also a warning to add some backup, because from the moment of your registration of your organization in the portal and the validation, there be some time in the middle, and if the self-registrant has left the organization or the email address is changed, then you will lose your access, and that will not be possible to interact with the commission anymore. So, but we will explain this in the next slides. Once you have gone all through these steps, your organization is registered in the participant portal. You will get a participant identification code, so-called PIC. It's a 9-digit code, and it's in a declared status. Declared means non-valid. So you have introduced your information, and this needs to be first validated by the Central Validation Services to be valid. So now we've seen you have registered your organization, and it's a moment for the Central Validation Service to verify the information that you have provided. These information are verified based on official documents that you will be requested to provide that have to be consistent with the information you have declared on in the portal. So this is done of course before the signature of the grant agreement or any contract with the Commission. It's mandatory, so you cannot, as you already heard in the previous presentation, you cannot sign a grant agreement or a contract if your entity is, if your organization is not first validated by the Central Validation Services. It's done in the single electronic data interchange area, so-called SEDIA. You already see this acronym in the funding and the portal. Is done once. This is the main principle of the SEDIA, so that you will be requested only once to provide documents to validate your organization, and it's done when you sign your first grant agreement or contract. So if you are validated, you will need to sign another grant agreement in the future to participate to other programs or tenders. You don't need to be validated again, and you will reuse the same PIC. So and this is the last point. The validation is done, performed by the Central Validation Service according to the validation rules that you can find also in the portal, in the front end of the portal. Here you can find this is a link to the rules on legal entity validation, legal appointments, and financial capacity assessment. I will recommend you to have a few minutes to read these rules. This will, for sure, will make the validation process smoother because you understand and also based on what rules your validation is performed, is done. As you heard before, the validation is required for all beneficiaries and linked party or affiliate entities as the new and PICs of third parties sometimes are included in the consortium. The gap also for this must be introduced in the front end portal and must be validated by the Central Validation Services. As I said before, so what the Central Validation Service do? So first, we check that the legal entity exists. So and to this we have prepared for you the legal entity definition. So what does legal entity means? Means any natural or legal person created and recognized as such under national and international law. So you must, your organization must have a legal personality and should be able to act in its own name and to be able to exercise rights and be subject to obligations. This aspect will be validated based on the documents, supported documents that you will provide. You will be requested to upload in the portal. We will see better later in details what these documents are. In some cases, and based on certain if two criteria are met, your organization can be validated even if it does not have legal personality. These two conditions are that first, the organization must have a legal representative who can act on behalf of the organization, so who can undertake legal obligation on behalf of the organization. And another aspect is more on the financial side, that the organization can offer equivalent guarantees for the protection of your financial interests. So the equivalent to a legal entity, to an entity with a legal personality. So must have financial and operational capacity. In case your organization does not have legal personality, so cannot be validated as a legal entity and does not meet the two criteria, the two conditions that we just saw, of course, cannot be validated and will be linked to the peak of the mother organization. So the association to whom from whom it's depending. So if it's a branch of a multinational company, branch cannot be validated, don't have legal personality, and will be linked to the. You must use the peak of the mother organization, or for example, university department, which has no legal personality, must use the peak of the university. But there can be many examples I can do. Of course, everything will depend on the conditions on your status. It's very important. The validation is done based on support on official documents, and we just saw the legal validation, the legal existence of your organization. Now we'll see another aspect that is verified by the Central Validation Service, and it's the legal status of your organization. As you may know, there must be different status linked to your organization, and why those status are so important. Are important, for example, because there must be different terms of funding rates. For example, if your organization is a non-profit entity, or some programs can set specific eligibility criteria for company or organizations that have specific status, for example, SME and middle capitalization companies. And we just talked about special legal statuses, and here we'll see a list of the special legal status that are verified and validated by the Central Validation Services. So your entity, your organization can be validated either as a private entity or public body, as a non-profit or for-profit organization, small or medium-sized enterprise, middle capitalization enterprise, non-governmental organization, civil society organization, international organization, research organization, or secondary or higher education establishment. Some of these statuses are self-declared by your organization, but it doesn't mean that they're not checked. It can be ex post checks to verify if the data introduced and declared in the portal are correct. But other status must be validated by the Central Validation Services with the supporting documents. And these status are, for example, private entity or public body. You will be requested to provide specific supporting documents, even also the non-profit or for-profit organization and international organization. But we will see this more in details in the next slides. So you saw already before the presentation of my colleague Pedro, you need to have a new login to enter in the Funded Tender portal and access your organization. So you see in My Organization here, then you can go on modify your organization, and you will enter to the participant register or the Funded Tender portal. You will see you will have different tabs regarding your organizational data, legal information, authorized users, LEAR, bank accounts, financial capacity, and messages. Regarding authorizing users, I will repeat this again more in details. Before the validation of your entity, of your organization, is the self-registrant. After your organization has been validated and the LEA has been appointed and validated by the Central Validation Services, then the contact point will be the LEA, not anymore the self-registrant. Here you will see in the circle the messaging part, and also in the messaging section you can see the subject, have a quick view, and on this tab on this page you can communicate with the Central Validation Service. So it's very important that you will use this channel of communication, but we will also repeat this later. In this slide we see the document section. So the first, when you will be contacted by the Central Validation Services, you will receive an email requesting all the documents necessary for your validation, the validation of your organization, and the LEA validation. Based on the information provided by yourself during the registration of your organization, you will receive the request of a set of documents to be uploaded in the portal. And in this slide, you see how it looks like. So you have the document type. For example, this might be the normal request for a private entity, and so it will be request a registration document, the file form, and the statutes, but we'll see more in details right after. And you will see the status of your documents in the port if it's a request if it's been uploaded, and here the action you can do so to upload the documents requested or add any other additional documents you might think might be necessary for the validation. Now we see what are the documents requested by us, by the Central Validation Services. Of course, not all of documents will be requested for all type of organization. This is the full set, but depending on the type of organization that you have declared, you receive the request for specific documents. The document that will be requested for every participant is legal entity form. So you have here already in the, a template, but you will receive also in the message from the Central Validation Service there will be an hyperlink with the page of the legal entity form where you can download and fill in a PDF file. There are 3 different types of legal entity form depending on the type of your organization. So if you are a natural person, if you are a private legal entity, or if you are a public body. So depending on what is the type of your organization, you will be requested to complete the form, to date, and be stamped by and signed by the legal representative. Another document that it's requested is a VAT extract. It must be recent, so less than 6 months old. If you are not registered for a VAT, then you will be requested to provide a proof of VAT exemptions. For private entities, we request a registration extract. Again, must be recent, less than 6 months old. Whether for public bodies, you will need to provide a law, decree, or decision of the creation of your organization as a public body. For international organization, you will be requested to provide the treaty, so the treaty that created your international organization. And for non-profit organizations, you will need to upload the statutes of your organization. The documents must be official, so delivered by official authorities. They cannot be replaced by self-declaration or sworn statements. So must be, for example, if your organization is a private entity and there is a register in the Chamber of Commerce, you can provide an official registration extract from your Chamber of Commerce. But it's just an example. There can be several different kind of organizations. Must be uploaded by you, so by the participants, via the participant register using the document tab that we saw in the slide before. So this is very important. It should not be sent by email. All documents must be uploaded through the portal to the participant register. Documents can be provided in any of the official EU language. Also for the legal entity form, this form that I just explained before. Also, you will find in the hyperlink of the email, the message requesting documents. You can find different languages. It's done in 22 languages, so you can choose your language and fill it in your EU official language. If your organization is not based in EU or documents are not in EU official language, then a free translation in English is required. So just free translation. We see now the registration of your organization, the verification by the Central Validation Service of your legal existence and the legal status. Now we will see the validation of the LEAR. Repeat, LEAR stands for Legal Entity Appointed Representative. And repeat, it's mandatory for all validated participants. So why the role of LEAR is so important? We've seen before already in the previous presentation that the LEAR has a very important role. That's why we need to, it must be validated by the Central Validation Services. And the main roles are to keep an overview of the proposal, of the project, and where your organization is involved. So, and can have access at the organizational level, manage all the legal and financial information of the organization, and can appoint, can assign the roles at to the other person who will be the legal signatories or the financial signatories. How to appoint the LEAR? So we see here in the authorized users. Now that your organization has been validated, precise that validation of your organization and the LEAR point validation is done at the same time. So there are not two different steps. Once the validation of your organization is starts, you will be requested to provide both the documents of the legal validation and the LEAR validation, and if necessary, also for the financial capacity assessment, but this will be explained later by my colleague Alberto. So you will also be requested to validate, to appoint your LEAR, and that will be validated by us. You will receive this message, and by clicking to the button Add LEAR, you can add all information required for your LEAR. And we will see now what this information are. So you must use your professional email, the first name, last name. Very important, you also need to have a new login account. And it's very important that all data in that are in the portal, in the documents that you upload, must correspond to the official document. So if, please don't use nicknames for LEAR, for legal representative, because all information must be consistent with the supporting documents. Maybe a couple of words more on the distinctions between the legal representative and the LEAR, the legal entity appointed representative, because I saw already before in the previous Q&A sessions there was some question about it. So the LEAR, the legal entity appointed representative, can be the legal representative, but also another person within the organization. The important is a person who is entrusted by the legal representative, who is appointed by the legal representative to perform all the actions that we just saw before. So they are very important. It's a very important role, but it's not necessary that it's the legal representative. It can be any person within the organization. The most important part is that it's appointed by the legal representative. So if your organization, it's a private entity, might be the CEO, might be the president of an association who appoint the LEAR by providing supporting documents, and this appointment will be validated by the Central Validation Service. Some word also regarding the, you can also add your mobile phone. This will be eventually used only to receive a PIN code. We recommend to provide your mobile phone, because this will speed up, will make the you will receive the PIN faster in your mobile phone. Otherwise, you will receive via post. So this will take some more few days, but it's not mandatory. You can decide whether or not to provide your mobile phone. So once your LEAR is validated, you will receive a confirmation message by the Central Validation Service, and with all the instructions to activate your account. You will receive the PIN code that will be sent by our service desk by by default. It's by post, but for urgent case, for example, you are the grant preparation is approaching to the deadline, so you will need to have your account as a LEAR ready. You can contact the help desk, the service desk, by sending an email, or if you have provided your mobile phone number, you will receive the PIN code, and then it will be much faster. One part of the tab is dedicated to the legal representative data. So we saw before you have you'll be requested to introduce the data of your LEAR, appointed LEAR, but also a few information regarding the legal representative, so the title, first name and last name, together with the other documents that we will now see. The documents are generated, but the first two documents are generated by the system. So you will, once you introduce all the data of the LEAR and the legal representative, you can download the generated documents. What you have to do is to sign and date, and then sign the documents. The LEAR appointment letter and roles and duties of the LEAR must be signed by both the legal representative and the LEAR. And the declaration of consent to the EU funded and the portals will be signed only by the legal representative. You will be requested to provide also an official proof of identity, both of the legal representative and the LEAR. Please upload ID cards or passport that contains a signature and a photo. So normally it's both sides, recto verso version of these documents. And very important also, the proof of empowerment of the legal representative. This is very important. Here you will see how it will look after you will upload the LEAR documents and the status within the participant register. Then, if needed, you also during the grant preparation will need to also to define to provide your bank account number. You will see in the grant management system, service system of the Funding Tender portal, all bank accounts available that you have already validated. If you don't have one, if no account exists, or you want to use a different bank account, so you will need to validate this new bank account. You can do through the portal. In some cases, you might receive also an email from us, from the Central Validation Services, with all instructions on how to validate your bank account. In any case, there is a wizard that you can use, introducing few information, and then this will be validated by the Central Validation Services. So as you see, this is the time that the metro line of the how the bank account is performed. So you will introduce your data, details, upload the requested documents, and confirm and submit. And then we will take care of it. We will proceed with the validation of your bank accounts. together with the digit badge. So now I will, my colleague Alberto will tell you everything you need to know regarding the financial capacity assessment when, if needed. We'll see in a few slides.
And we are going to see together how the financial capacity assessment, what the financial capacity assessment is. Also, because the financial capacity assessment is not checked in all organizations, we are going to see when it's needed and what to do if it is. Of course, if you have questions, I will be glad to take them at the end of this presentation. Let's start then with the first slide with some legal references that are important to know. As we will see in the slide, here it is. The first reference document is the guide with the rules on legal validation, legal appointment, and financial capacity assessment that you should check, because it includes all the details about the respective procedures. This document is available in the Funding and Tenders portal, and you will find also a hyperlink at the end of this presentation. Then we have the EU financial regulation establishing the need of the financial capacity assessment, documents to provide, and the exceptions, the entities exempted of being checked. As we can see in the slide, the exempted entities are public bodies, international organizations, natural persons in need, and natural persons in receipt of education support. Then finally, we have the Horizon Europe regulation, establishing in its Article 27 the entities subject to financial capacity assessment. These are basically the coordinators with requested funding for an action equal to or greater than 500,000 euros, but also some beneficiaries might be checked if there are doubts about their financial capacity. In any case, you will know that the financial capacity of your organization is going to be checked because you will receive from the Central Validation Service a message in your PIC account in the participant register. Let's see in the next slide how to identify if we have received such request. Once in the participant register, we saw before with Pietro how to reach this part with the tabs. We will notice that we have received a new message from the Central Validation Service because the Messages tab will display a red dot. Then, by checking the subject of the message, as we can see in the lower part of the slide, we will find if this request comes regarding legal validation, legal appointment, or financial capacity assessment. In this case, we will identify financial capacity assessment request for documents. This is the very first message you are going to receive in your PIC account if the financial capacity of your organization is going to be checked. In order to have access to this message, you need to click in the action view we see on the right of the screen with the icon of the envelope. By clicking there, we will have access to the content of the message, and we will see that this message includes the rules followed for the preparation of the financial capacity assessment, the supporting documents to provide, the minimum content and requirements of these documents, and the deadline to provide them. In any case, if you have questions, you need further clarifications during the process, you can contact always the Central Validation Service via always the participant register, because this is the proper channel of communication with us. And you will do that by clicking the new message option we can see on the right of the screen. What is very important is that you include as subject of the message a reference regarding the content of your question. If it is regarding legal validation, legal appointment, financial capacity assessment, etc. Like that, it will be easier for us to trace them. Okay, now that we have seen that we must provide some supporting documents to the Central Validation Service, let's see which these documents are. For the financial capacity assessment, you must provide first balance sheet and profit and loss account for the two most recent closed and approved financial years. These documents must be signed by the legal representative of the entity, dated, and you must provide them in the official language in which these financial statements have been drafted. Because we analyze the documents in their official language. Only if the financial statements have been drafted in a non-EU language, free translation into English is mandatory. If your organization is a new established entity without closed accounts yet, you must provide a business plan, including financial projections of the first year of activity at least. Other document which is needed in some cases is the external audit report. And it's when a participant, either a coordinator or beneficiary, who is going to be checked, has requested individually more than 750,000 euros. This is external audit report on the on the annual account, must be provided. If your organization is not obliged by your respective national law to produce an audit report on the annual accounts, you must provide instead a self-declaration that you will find in the participant register, but also in our message financial capacity assessment request for documents that we previously saw. And upload this self-declaration in the system. This self-declaration must be signed by the legal representative. This is very, very important. And some supporting documents must be also provided. These documents are detailed in the template of the self-declaration you will find in the participant register. Then we always strongly advise to or suggest to provide also the explanatory notes on the annual accounts. And this is very, very important for us in order to prepare a more accurate assessment because the explanatory notes include normally information which is not available in the balance sheet and the profit and loss account, mainly about maturity, nature of some accounting items, etc. So please provide also the explanatory notes on the annual accounts. Now that we know the documents to provide, let's see in the next slide how to provide them. Again, we are back in the participant register, and then we see that close to the message tab, we have the financial capacity tab. We will identify that we must provide some financial documents because the financial capacity tab will display a red flag. What is very important is that you provide the financial documents via the action you can see below in blue, the icon or the button, the blue button, provide necessary financial information. This is very, very important. Please provide the supporting documents for the financial capacity assessment by clicking this option. Even if you don't have the most recent set of accounts available yet, you are about to conclude them, please let us know via this functionality, because once you click there, you will be able to either upload all the supporting documents for the financial capacity assessment or to provide a justification about why it's not possible yet and the approximate date in which the documents will be available. Like that, we will inform the respective operational service. That's all from my side. Thank you for your attention, and see you in a little while in the questions and answer session. Thanks.
few slides before concluding our presentations and be ready for your questions. I would like to show you what is the workflow, let's say, path of a standard validation, so you can have a better idea. Once you receive the first request from the Central Validation Services to provide documents, if you reply with the submission of correct documents and complete set of documents, then the validation, the legal validation, the legal appointment, and eventually the FCA preparation is done quite quickly and smoothly. If you don't reply immediately, the Central Validation Service will send you reminders, so up to 3 reminders. So every week you will receive a notification from Central Validation reminding you to provide the requested documents. If you don't reply, your organization does not reply to our 3 reminders, they will put in a sleeping status, what is called sleeping status. So, and no reminders will be, you will not receive any reminders. So I really strongly recommend you to check your inbox, to check email and notifications in a message system of the Funded portal to see if there is any message from the Central Validation Services. So then if you provide the correct documents, the validation will be concluded quickly. So we, as we said, the communication must be done exclusively through the participant register. This is an example of a message you might receive. You will find the message in the tab that we saw before in the participant register, but also notification on your email. So you receive a notification, and plus, if you are self-registered, you will see you receive the self-registered will receive communication from the Central Validation Services. Once the LEAR is appointed, the LEAR will receive all the communications. And very important aspect in case of you lost access to your non-valid or valid PICs. It's important to make a distinction because there's different process for both. If your PIC is not valid yet, then and you lost access, the best thing to do is to create a new PIC, to register again your organization, to get a new PIC and inform the Central Validation Services. We will proceed with link the duplicate PICs. If your organization is validated, then and the LEAR is not available anymore because left the organization, or the email there is some change in the email, so something must be updated and you don't have access to your PIC, then there is a specific procedure. There's a wizard in a participant in the Funded portal. You find here, it's called the LEAR recovery procedure. So by using this tool, you will be able to appoint again to validate the new LEAR, even if you lost your access. So you will see there all the information needed. And in this slide, we will find the hyperlink to the most important guidance documents you will need to know for your validation of your organization, the LEAR validation, and the financial capacity assessment. So we already talked about the rule of legal validation. The online manual, you will see how to register in the participant register. You will have a specific dedicated section for the help desk, and eventually for questions to relate to the validations, you can ask to Research Inquiry Service, so RES. You will find also in the portal very detailed already frequently asked questions, FAQ, so most of the time you might find your answer already in the questions there. And finally, the legal notice on the Funded in the portal for the terms and conditions and data protection. To finish, just to show you a graphic with the countries from where we validate PICs in an organization in 2021. So as you can see, we have validated entities from 146 countries throughout the world. Thank you very much for your attention, and now I'll be ready, me and Alberto, to answer all your questions regarding legal validations and the financial capacity assessment.
Thank you questions, and Alberto will answer from home. We cannot see the questions on the screens, but I have the questions here. So actually, we have quite a lot of questions, so please be very brief in answering. If a company having a PIC code is changing its legal name, how to proceed?
It depends, of course, if the company's organization is already validated or not. In any case, in the portal and the participant register, you need to modify the data of your entity and provide always supporting documents that support the change. So if the legal name is changed, you just enter to your organization, modify organization, introduce the new name, and attach the supporting documents. This is something that actually the LEA must do. If it's every change regarding the legal status or legal information of the organization must be communicated to the Commission, to the Legal Central Validation Service.
Thank you very much. I still cannot see the questions on the screens. I'm asking the technical room to change that, please. I'm reading them nevertheless in Slido. So how long does validation take approximately?
It depends on different factors. Yeah, I can say I can start with a recommendation. So when you receive the request, our message with the request for documents, take some time to read carefully the message. You will find all the information on the documents requested. And if you have doubts, you can also check the rules on legal validations and or requests or send a message to us in case of doubt. But if all documents are uploaded on time and are complete and correct, it does not take long time. So it depends really on on how quick are you on your reply and how correct and complete the documents are.
Thank you very much. Apparently, I skipped a question who had more likes. The leader can be the same person who covers the L sign and the P sign in the same organization?
Can be the same person. The only thing, the leader must be a person who is employed in the same organization, but then can cover different roles. So it can be, even the leader can be the same legal representative, and then, for example, if it's a small organization, can have different roles. And imagine also in the case of a natural person, of self-employed, where the leader is also managing everything, so it can cover different roles.
Perfect, thank you. It is possible to change the special legal status of an entity, and how can this be done?
As I said before, this is a change that will have an impact on the legal status of your organization. So is done in the participant register. So the same place where you register your organization, where you register your PIC, you modify and you add the information on the new status. But of course, it's mandatory that you upload also supporting documents on your status. So for example, if your organization was not was a non-profit before and became a for-profit organization, then you need to provide the supporting documents, for example, the new statutes of your organization that define your organization as non-profit.
Thank you very much. Is there a minimum number of researchers required to be a research organization? At least 10 researchers, blah, blah?
No, this is something that it's, no.
Perfect, yeah, has nothing to do in addition with your team. In which case, an organization which has a PIC must change it? Change of name, change of VAT number, is there any case?
The PIC is the main purpose of the so-called SEDIA system is that the PIC is validated only once. So if your PIC, it's very important to define if your PIC is already valid or not. If it's not valid, you can change. You can decide to use another PIC. So until it's in declared status, you can change. Because, for example, as I said before, you lost the access to the previous PIC, so you can always switch to another PIC. The important thing is to inform always the Central Validation Services through the messaging system, so that we know that you want to use the new PIC and we can link the two. But if your PIC is already valid, you cannot change your PIC. So the PIC is valid once, and once it's validated, you need to use the PIC for all the participation of your in any program or a tender. So you need just to use this one, and then any change will be done on the PIC. Of course, if the changes are major changes, then there can be some situation. For example, in case of a universal takeover, if the entity is not anymore ceased to exist, of course, something the PIC will not be available anymore. But if your organization still exists, then and there are not major changes, like change the completely the nature of the organization, then the PIC shall remain the same.
Thank you. Next question. I think we have time for 2 more questions. Is there any possibility for the CO to see the status of the validation process of partners in the gap or see any issues raised?
Unfortunately, you will see the status. The only thing you will see is as declared or valid. So you don't see the different steps, but you will be regularly in contact with my colleagues, the colleagues of the Central Validation Services, who will be in contact with you. So once you provide the documents, already you will see a knowledge of receipt, so you know that the documents have been received by the Central Validation Services, and the validation, the verification of the information provided in the portal, and the check of the supporting documents provided is ongoing. So already when you receive it, you know that the validation is ongoing, and if you don't receive any other communication, any other request for additional of missing documents or documents that are not correctly filled in, if you don't receive any communication on this, the validation is ongoing, and you will just receive a confirmation of the validation of your entities, and then after that you will see the status of your organization as valid.
Does an associated partner need to have a validated PIC?
Associated partners, I think, not only beneficiaries and affiliated entities, so all the linked parties.
And now really the last question. Who has to communicate the changing of the LEAR? The legal representative of an institution or the previous LEAR?
It depends who has access. So normally it should be if the change of LEAR still, if the new LEAR is still, or the previous LEAR still access, the person who is entitled to keep the communications with the Central Validation Service, with the Commission, is the LEAR. So if the LEAR is still there and there is the need to change the LEAR, it's the previous LEAR who can communicate and provide a new set of documents. So that means that just keep in mind, every change of LEAR is a new validation of a LEAR. So the process is the same. You will be then a request to fill all the information of the new LEAR in the portal, and to upload the requested documents and the supporting documents, like the power empowerment of the legal representative and the ID documents of the LEAR and the legal representative again.
Thank you very much. I think we should close now because, well, we are running very late.
Okay.
Thank you again for coming from so far, and thank you, Alberto, also for joining us from home.
Thank you.
We are going to cut now for 5 minutes. We will resume, not 10, sorry, but because we are so late, we will resume at 11:20. See you in a few minutes. Thank you. So, welcome back. We have already Isabel here, but before she starts, actually, I would like to make a few remarks about the trainings, about the coordinators' days and the other trainings we organize. Usually, we organize 4 coordinators' days a year. We have usually 2 on grant agreement preparation and 2 on amendments and reports. So far, we are at the beginning of Horizon 2020. We just had 1 on grant agreement preparation in January. This is the second one. And we didn't have anything on amendments and reports, just because there are not so many contracts running at this moment on Horizon 2020. But we are going to organize 1 probably at the end of the year, so stay tuned for that. We might have also another 1, a third one on grant agreement preparation, always towards the end of the year, just depending on the number of invitation letters to start a grant agreement preparation. We will have to check that carefully, and once we see that there is a significant number, we will have another grant agreement preparation training. All these trainings are recorded. This one is being recorded, and you can always find the recordings on YouTube. As you know, as you probably know, we have a YouTube channel. It's called EU Science and Innovation, EU Science and Innovation. If you go there, you search for webinars, you will see all the trainings we have done. All the webinars that started since last year already are still there, and they will still be there for a long time with the presentation, supporting material, etc. And the recording, of course. And what else? Let me see. Yeah, we have other trainings. We organize trainings every few weeks. For instance, next week we have, as I mentioned before, we have a training on gender equality plan, and that will be on the 23rd. And on the 22nd, we have a training on avoiding errors in personnel costs. But this one, this avoiding errors, is for Horizon 2020 grants, so most probably you are not concerned. Nevertheless, towards the end of the year, we are planning to start an avoiding errors for Horizon Europe trainings. So stay tuned. How to stay tuned? Very easy. We always announce these trainings 2, 3, 4 weeks in advance sometimes in the news section of the Funding and Tenders portal. So there you have the link. You can always look there from time to time whether there are trainings announced. If you look every 2 weeks, don't worry, you will have time enough, because usually, always, I promise, always we announce them with more than 2 weeks of anticipation. So that's all from my side. I hope to see you in the trainings next week. And otherwise, from September on, usually July, August, we don't have trainings just because half of Europe is on holidays. So, saying so, I would like to welcome again Isabel here. Isabel, as I said before, is the Deputy Head of Unit in the Common Business Process Unit at the European Commission, DG RTD, Research and Innovation. And now she will present the scientific and technical description of the project, the description of action. Isabel, please.
Thank you, Manuel. Good morning again to all. And as Manuel mentioned, I am going to present to you all the steps that you need to perform to build your grant agreement, and in particular, all the changes and all the information that you need to encode in our tool to build the description of the action. That is the Annex 1 of the grant agreement. This doesn't work. So I don't know. Yes, it's working. Sorry for this. So my presentation covers these 3 points that you see in the slide now. And the first is a very short point about the introduction to the grant agreement preparation. So Petros already this morning covered most of the points. It's just a reminder and to give you some more details about mainly the timing. Then I will go through a description of what is needed to build the description of the action and in general the grant agreement in our IT tools. And then I will spend most of the time of this presentation going through the IT steps that you need to perform. I will not work live, but I will show you screenshots of the screens that you will have to work with. So the introduction of the grant agreement, Petros already showed to you this timing process this morning. So you know that we have a time to grant equal of 8 months. So the time to grant is counted from the call deadline until the grant is signed from your side and also from our side. We have 5 months to finalize our evaluation. This is not a long period, so we are doing our evaluation as efficient as possible. And we expect to send to you the evaluation result letters before this time to inform, before these 5 months. Once you receive a letter inviting you to start the grant agreement preparation, so we start counting the 3 months that we have to sign the grant. And then we will interact with you about 1 month, 2 months maximum But then we will need a bit of time for our internal work that we have to do. So probably our interaction with you will finish weeks before the grant agreement is signed. And this is because we need to prepare formal award decisions in the Commission. We also need to prepare budgetary commitments in our budget. And for some grants, we also need to consult the member states. This is what we call the comitology process. So depending on the cluster your grant is, depending also on the budget, we need to inform the member states in the program committee about the projects that we are about to fund, how was the grant agreement preparation process, if there were changes in some proposals, there are changes in participants, etc. And then we need an opinion of the member states. And this process takes time, so we need to inform the member states with weeks in advance for them to take a decision. And so it's a time-consuming process. And from your side, probably you are waiting there thinking what they are doing. We have finished everything, so I want to sign my grant. But no, the issue is that we still need some time to finalize all the work that we have to do. This is what Petros presented this morning. So for the interaction that we have with you, so we foresee an initial period of 3 weeks in which we will ask you to prepare all the data. So it is good that you already, in the first submission, submit something that you think is complete. Yeah, so this will save time for all. Then the PO, our project officer, will check the data. And if everything goes well, if everything is okay, so we will not come back to you again. So we will go ahead with the process of the grant signature. And if we still need some changes from our side, we will send the session in the portal to you to allow you to work more in the data of the grant agreement. So the structure of the grant agreement is the sum of all the scientific, technical, budgetary, administrative, and legal information about your project. And this constitutes what we call the grant agreement. So the grant agreement includes different parts. The first is a data sheet with all the information. So it's a summary of all relevant information that you need in 1 or 2 pages for the managing of your project. And then the core grant agreement with all the legal articles that you need to comply with. Then we have the Annex 1 to the grant agreement, which is the description of the action. And this is based on the proposal that you have sent. So ideally, it's equal to the proposal, but I will explain to you that we need some changes from your side. Then we have the Annex 2, the estimated budget, that this, again, is coming from proposal, so little changes are expected there, or non-changes. And then we have other annexes as in particular relevant for Horizon Europe is the Annex 5 with all specific rules that apply for Horizon Europe. So I will concentrate the rest of the slides about the description of the action. So the Annex 1 to the grant agreement, which, as I mentioned, is based on the proposal information. So the description of the action has a similar structure as the proposal. As you know, the proposal has a Part A and a Part B. The Part A is automatically produced by our tools, and with the information that you encode in web-based forms in our tools. And the Part B is a document that you upload with all the relevant and technical information about your project as a PDF document at the time of the proposal. Well, the description of the action is exactly the same. So it includes 2 parts. The Part A that is generated automatically by our IT tool based on the information that you encode in web-based forms in the participant portal. And the Part B is the narrative part that is uploaded as a PDF. The difference between the proposal and the description of the action is that many information that it was included in the Part B as a narrative, we ask you now to include it in the Part A. So we will ask you to move some information from the PDF that you submitted in the proposal to our web forms in the participant portal. When you are invited to start the grant agreement preparation, and when you enter into the system, you will be able to download the template for the description of the action. So this document is not exactly a template because, as I mentioned, we expect you to have a description of the action that is similar to the proposal. This document includes all the instructions that you have to do, all the steps that you have to follow to generate the Part B of the description of the action. And it may depend, so the instructions might be different depending on the goal and depending on the type of action. So please do not go to the portal reference documents there, because there we include only standard templates. Download your template from the grant management system once you enter in the grant agreement preparation of your project. So the description of the action Part A. So this includes a cover page, a table of contents, a project summary that is based on the proposal abstract, a list of participants based on the participants in the proposal. So this is automatically filled in the tools. You don't have to do anything with this information. But it also includes a list of work packages, the staff effort, list of deliverables, list of milestones, and list of critical risk. And all this information was included in the proposal in the Part B. So what we will ask you in order to generate the Part B is to move the information from your narrative, from your PDF, to our web-based forms. So as Petros mentioned this morning, so we don't expect changes in the description of the action. So we have a no negotiation approach. We expect that the proposals that are invited to start grant agreement preparation are of high quality and they are ready to be funded. But nevertheless, as Petros mentioned also this morning, some changes might be needed. Yeah. So for the Part B, as I mentioned, we have a template, what we call a template of the description of the action, which is not a template, but a list of instructions that you have to do. These instructions go in detail, step by step, of all the things that we are asking you to do. So the first one is you need to start with the narrative part of your proposal, Part B. You need to remove the cover page, because we will later on generate automatically another one. You need to delete the header and replace the footer with the following information. So the proposal number, proposal acronym, Part B, page number, and starting at, and the number of pages starting at 1 for Part B. You need to remove the list of participants, because this list of participants is included now in Part A. And then you need to remove the tables related to the list of work packages, work package description, deliverables, milestones, critical risk, summary of staff effort. And so you need to remove these tables because we will ask you to copy all the information that you included in the proposal Part B now in the screens in the web forms of our tool. You need to create a section 4 in the proposal template, which is called ethics self-assessment, and copy the ethics self-assessment that you included in your proposal Part B. This is temporary, so we expect in the future to communicate automatically the information from our evaluation tool to the granting tool, but this is not yet there. So for the time being, we are asking you to copy the information. And then you need to add a history of changes table and explain all the changes. You need to be quite detailed here because it's important for the project officer to know whether you are including changes in comparison with the proposal. And then to add a table of contents. So as I mentioned, if you include changes, please inform the PO. The PO will detect anyway the changes. And if you are considering changes, please discuss with the project officer first. Substantial changes to the proposal are not allowed. Other things that you need to pay attention to is that, as we mentioned this morning, so the proposals that are likely to be funded will be subject also to an ethics review and a security scrutiny. Not all of them, but we will check some security in all proposals now in Horizon 2020, in Horizon Europe, sorry. So as a result of this ethics review and the security scrutiny, it might be that our evaluators will ask you to include some requirements in your proposal. So this will be binding for you. So you will need to pay attention to these ethics requirements and security requirements. And then in many cases, if these requirements are due after the grant agreement is signed, those requirements will be translated automatically as deliverables. But in any case, you need to discuss with your project officer the outcome of this ethics review. And then one final point is please avoid repetition. So we are asking you to do those steps to move the information from part B to part A because we don't want to have repeated information in different parts of the description of the action. I know that probably it will be not a problem for you, but in many cases it's a problem for us when in some cases you change information in one part, not in the other, and then at a certain moment of the project life, we will not know what is the information that is valid. So please ensure that all information appear only in one place in the description of the action. So now I will go through the last part of the presentation, and I will go through all the screens, all the information that you will have to encode in the web forms for the grant agreement preparation. So as mentioned this morning, so to enter in the grant agreement of your proposal, you have to log in the portal. You have to go to My Proposals there. If you have several proposals, you will see in this screen a list of all proposals in which you are involved. You select the one you want to work with, click on Action, and then click on Manage a Project. Once you do this, you enter in another system, fully transparent for you, that is called Grant Management Service. And then in this system, so if it is the first time, if you are in the grant agreement preparation, of course, you only have one process visible, which is the preparation of the grant agreement. For running projects, you may have different processes here listed in this screen, one after the other. You may have, if the grant is signed, you will have the grant agreement process already finished. If you have reporting and payments ongoing, you will have, you will see in this screen all those processes that are ongoing or finished for your project. So we are in the grant agreement preparation. So you want to prepare your grant agreement. So you click on this line, and then you enter in yet another system, transparent for you, in which you will see a number of different screens, different tabs, and all these screens will cover the information that we need you to check. So we will also check from our side, but this you need to check page by page and see that all information is correct. We will go quickly through all the screens, explaining what you have to do in all of them. Starting, I don't have a screen with the project summary, but you will see a screen with the proposal abstract. If you want to change the text, it's perfectly okay, but please inform the project officer of your changes and agree with the project officer whether the changes are okay. And also take into account that this project summary is public information, so will later on be published in our web places, in particular in Cordis. Then we go to the page on beneficiary, which is taking all the information automatically from the proposal, and you will see here the list of all participants here. Beneficiaries and affiliated entities. So you will see here the peak of all of them, and you see in this screen whether the PIC has been validated or not. Then each participant is responsible to go into the details that we have for each of them. So you click in the line that you want to check. You go now in a screen where we show all the details that we know for this particular participant. So in these two squares, boxes, you have an idea on where you are. So you are in the grant management system, in the tab participants, and then you are looking into one particular beneficiary. You have the information there. The first tab will be the partner summary, where you will see all the information that we have in our participant register. So here is only for information to you, but you have to include the information about departments if you need to do so, because this information was not included in the proposal and sometimes is needed in the grant management. So if you wish, you can include the information about the department that is busy with this project in your organization. And then in this screen, you also have information on whether a gender equality plan has already been declared in the participant registry for your organization. The next step in this, we are still in the partner details. The next step will be the financial information for this partner, the budget for this partner, and this is information that is automatically translated from the proposal. So you only need to check, sorry, I went too fast. You only need to check that all the amounts are okay and in line what it was proposed. So because the information is automatically taken, so we don't expect mistakes here, but please check because you never know if there are errors in the communication between our different tools. You also can check here in this tab the project representatives. So if you need to nominate further representatives, I think in the presentations of this morning, my colleagues have explained how. So you will need to go to the participant portal, check my organization, and assign the roles that you wish for this particular project. And then you also, if you have affiliated entities, you will also, this particular participant will see here the list of affiliated entities. And for each of the affiliated entities, you can click in the name, and then you see that you are here in the grant management, one participant, and then a third box showing that you are an affiliated entity to that participant. And then you see similar pages about project summary and the financial information of this affiliated entity. We have, and this is new for Horizon Europe, we have another screen with the associated partners. So here, the information will be translated automatically from the proposal. So you will see here a list of the associated partners. So as you know, the associated partners participate in the project. They don't sign the grant agreement. They also don't get funding from the European Union from the project. But they can be work package leaders. There was a technical problem with the first grants in Horizon Europe, and this was not possible technically. This has been solved. So associated partners can be work package leaders. And we also asked you to include the researchers of associated partners in the researchers table as well. But for this, only the coordinator can encode those names. Yeah. So the budget that is going to be used by the associated partners, so own resources, other financial information, so it's not budget coming from the project, will not be included in the grant agreement, but we keep the information in the proposal as a reference. So, so this budget is not translated into Annex 2 of the grant agreement, but we keep the budget of the proposal as a reference for future needs and also for our statistics. So if you click the name of the associated partners, so, no, sorry. So, yes, no, I had another version of the presentation that is not this, but anyway. So what I wanted to say is that if you click here in the line of the name of the associated partner, you will enter in another screen where you will see all the information of the associated partner. And then you will have the possibility in that screen to link the associated partner to a beneficiary. So in Horizon Europe, the associated partners can be linked to the consortium as a whole or to a beneficiary. In the proposal, we don't have this information, so associated partners are included as if they were associated to the whole consortium. But here in the grant agreement preparation, so we really need to know whether this associated partner, if you wish to link the associated partner to a specific beneficiary or to the whole consortium. And then you can do it in the screen that will appear when you click on the name of the associated partner. And then only for the coordinator, so we will have the bank account that we will use to make the payment. So the bank accounts that the coordinator will see in this screen are all bank accounts validated for this organization. And if you have only one, it will be easy. You select the bank account that is validated. If the organization has several bank accounts, you will have to select which is the bank account that you want to use for this project. And then for researchers, so this is also new in Horizon Europe. It is also new in the proposal. So in the proposal, we are asking you to give us the name of all the researchers that will be involved in the proposal. So take into consideration that we have a wide definition of what a researcher is. So we are not talking about researchers working only for public entities. So it could perfectly be that private organizations have also researchers as a staff working for them. We are, nevertheless, as you know, working for a research program. So please check the definition of researchers that we have in the proposal template and see for which category the personnel that will be involved in your proposal is linked to. But as I said, the definition of researchers is the one that we use is the one that is included in the Frascati report and is quite wide. So here, the page will be pre-filled with the information that it was included in the proposal. And then you have the possibility to list more names here. We know that the time of the proposal, at the time you submit the proposal, it might be that you don't know yet who will finally work for the project. So for this reason, so at the time of the proposal, you give us what you know. We don't need to have placeholders in this researchers table, so you give us the information that you know at the time you submit the proposal, and then if during gap agreement preparation you know more names, then you include them in this tab. You can include new names by using the person profile. So you give us the email, and then you can ask, sorry, where is this? No. So you can import the information that we have of the person profile, or you can just manually fill in all the details that we need in this screen. About work packages. So as I mentioned, here is where the work is for you. It's tedious work, probably. It's just copy-paste all the information that it was included in the proposal part B, now in this screen. So you have to go work package per work package and copy-paste all the information that it was included in the proposal. You can draft this information or include this information in the order you prefer, because you can reorder later on the work packages by dragging and dropping in this screen. This is the same for deliverables. Again, is work about copying what you included in the proposal and paste it in this screen. Here, please pay attention to the dissemination level of the deliverables. is something critical for you because all deliverables that have a dissemination level equal to public will be automatically published once they are approved by our project officer in Cordis. So please check carefully the dissemination level of all your deliverables. The same for milestones. Again, you need to copy-paste the information in this screen, and don't forget to remove the information from the narrative. And the same for critical risks. So it's just a copy-paste of the information. If you do changes on those screens, on the milestone, work packages, deliverables, critical risk, please inform the project officer and agree with the project officer whether these changes are okay to be included. And then we have finally the pages on ethics and security, where if the ethics review has already finalized, you will have here the information about the outcome of this ethics review. So you will have here whether your proposal includes some or is involved in some of these relevant ethics issues. You will also see whether the ethics evaluators ask you for some binding requirements. And then later on in this page, you can see whether some reports from your side have been submitted or not. And the same for the security. So here you will have, if your proposal finally, after the security review that we do, goes through a security scrutiny, then you will see here in these pages the security requirements that are binding for your project. And then finally, the last step is to upload once you make all the changes, once you remove all the information that is now included in the Part A. So you generate a PDF file, and then you upload it in this page that you click under Documents. And then you see Annex 1, description of the action. And then you will see here, it's here, I think. You will see here an action to upload this file. And this is it. So this is all what I wanted to say. Just for my last slide to inform, as Manuel mentioned before, that we have many webinars recorded in the portal. You have here a list of some of them that might be of your interest, and also with the link to the recorded session. And also for the new webinars and coordinators date, we announced them in the news section of the portal, and also in a section new in the portal that is called events, that you can find in the homepage of the portal. So thank you very much. Manuel.
We have quite a lot of questions, but we don't have so much time, so please be short with the answer. And we have, again, Petros here to help us with the answers. So the first one, I think you have already answered. I don't think we should go further. Associated partner affiliated entities can be leaders of work packages, tasks, etc. You want to add something else?
No, it is already answered by Isabel.
I think so. Table of changes. Do I have to include changes in Part A, such as example of a new acronym?
Well, yes. So these changes of the new acronym are not easy, so please consult the project officer. But yes, please mention it in the table of changes, yes.
Is it possible to change deliverable due dates to better fix to the reporting periods defined or other aspects that were overlooked during the proposal?
It is possible, but please check with the project officer. So note that this proposal, the experts, the evaluators that evaluated this proposal took into account all these due dates of the deliverable. So if you are changing these details, please contact the project officer. It might be an insignificant change, but it might be something that is important for the scientific methodology for the project. So please contact the project officer and agree with the project officer on those changes.
This new table you mentioned, the research table, applies only to researchers, to investigators, or to every person linked or worked in the project?
Well, as I mentioned, we have a definition, we use the Frascati definition of researcher, and that you can check this definition in the proposal template. It's a wide definition, so it does not include only investigator, as I assume you are referring to. So it's a wide definition, so please check.
What would
Maybe not administrative personnel. I mean, if the question is if it's somebody's just managing the financial documents, no, you're not required. But we know there is sometimes people in industry, they don't identify or they don't want to say that they are exactly researchers, although they do research. In that case, it's up to you. But we think even that case is covered if you see the definition.
Thank you for the clarification. What would be in practice the difference of associating an AP to the consortium or to a beneficiary?
Well, I think the implications are mainly legal. So if the associated partner is linked to the consortium, is the consortium as a whole responsible that the associated partner delivers? So delivers all the actions that they have to do in the time that the project mentioned that they have to be done. If it is linked to a beneficiary, the responsible will be the beneficiary. And all this is, we ask you to include all the agreements that we have between the consortium in the consortium agreement. Yeah. So it will be good to have all these questions specified in the consortium agreement. Yeah.
Thank you. The next question is from Laura Corcuera. If we include a person in the researchers tab, what that implies for the further financial reporting?
Well, in principle, this table of researchers is included in the proposal and in the grant agreement not only. So in principle was there to answer one of the indicators that we have for the evaluation of the program related to follow up the researcher's career. But this is information that is in the grant agreement. So at the time we check the financial aspect of the grant agreement, we can check all the information that is there. So it's relevant information that in principle the objective is only to be used for statistical purposes. But of course it can be used also for to check elements of the financial reporting. Yeah.
Amir Nakar is asking, once you've been informed, where do you find all the guidelines to prepare this document, description of action and grant agreement?
You have in the online manual in the portal a lot of information, but as I said, the template for the description of the action, so all these instructions, you will be able to download in the page, in the same page that I saw where you have to upload the description of the action. So you will be able to download this template with the instructions.
For the next question, I think you have answered already. Tab researchers, how do you manage new researchers that are added later during the project?
We'll have the possibility to do also later in the continuous reporting. So this is a live, let's say, table that you need to update once people are coming. Maybe just an indication to say, normally you don't remove, I think I saw there was another question also, you don't remove persons if they completed. It doesn't mean that it is the actual. You just add people who worked in the project, and of course people that you promised that they worked should be there. You don't remove somebody unless if there is a serious reason, let's say sickness or something. They should be there, the persons that you promised from the proposal.
Thank you, Petros. Are there any legal requirements for linking an associated partner to a specific beneficiary?
I think this was answered before. I mean, we said the implications.
How will the Commission verify that the researchers listed in the table of researchers are involved in the project? What kind of records should the participants keep?
This is maybe a task that later the auditors can check. In general, as Isabel said, this is for the reason to be there. It is to be able to answer a specific indicator for Horizon Europe to see what is the impact to the research of the program to the researchers who work there. So maybe you also receive later a questionnaire to answer some questions regarding your experience and the impact of the program. You don't need to keep records. Of course, you know, if people are mentioning the deliverables in the publications or anything relevant to the project, I think it proves that you worked.
Thank you. Can you discuss how potential ethics review requirements can be addressed in regards to the budget, since they may require additional costs?
Well, what it is sure is that the EC contribution cannot be increased. Yeah, so you will have to discuss with your project officer how to deal with this specific problem in your project. But the EU contribution cannot be increased. Yeah.
The next one is a suggestion, actually. It has three likes. To avoid errors, now deliverables have to be coded in Deliverables tab, but described in a separate section in the Word package description. Please link these two. Do you want to comment, or?
Well, I want to comment this because I think we had this linked in the first call for Horizon Europe, and then we have unlinked then because there was a lot of requests coming from the participants saying that we need to avoid repetition in the proposal. Yeah. We have page limits, and repetition of information was consuming space in the proposal. So we streamlined the tables, and we have just unlinked this information. So for the time being, we don't plan to go back to the previous way of showing the tables, but if we keep receiving these requests, we will think about. Yeah.
The next one about the table has been answered by Petros. You don't have to remove researchers. The next question from Laura Corcuera again. Do we have to press the submit button every iteration, or just the final ones after several iterations with the PO?
You need to press submit as soon as you think that you are ready. So if you are in contact with the PO, also discuss with the PO when to do it. But it's better that you press submit when you think that you have finalized all the work and that it's ready to sign the grant. So it might be that the PO still has some questions to discuss, and the session is back to you. But I would propose that you submit when you are already sure that you have a final or very close to final version.
Thank you very much. And now the last question, since we are running out of time, can we add the new researchers in the researchers tab during the project? We have done that already. So it's another one. Do we have to fulfill all the GA data in the portal in the first iteration, or do we wait for the grant agreement comments document and draft and description of action?
No, I would say that, as I mentioned, so please submit when you are ready or when you think that you are very close to a final version of the grant agreement. So when you have made all the work that we have asked you to do. Yeah.
So that's all for now. Sorry, we cannot continue. Thank you very much, Isabel. Thank you very much, Petros. And now we go to the final presentation. It's legal and financial aspects. And this one is a recorded presentation from a few months ago. Totally up to date, of course. It's from Julien Dulot and from DG the Common Legal Service, and Nicolas Welk from DG Budget. So after this presentation that lasts 40 minutes, at least Julien will be here to answer questions. I think he will be here remotely, but he will answer questions that you can pose now in Slido. The technical room has the video, I imagine, so can we please launch it?
I think it is.
Yes,
So,
very
yes,
good.
it's fine.
Nice.
Thank you very much, colleague. So yes, my name is Julien Dulot. So I'm working in the legal unit, as Peter said, and I will be also accompanied with by my colleague Isabelle Leroy, that will also help me to handle your question afterwards. You have asked in the Slido tool. And yes, indeed, colleague from DG Budget, Nicolas Welk, will also help me to do this presentation, and will focus on daily rate calculation today. So this will be our journey together. I will focus on main key legal and financial aspects stemming from the model grant agreement, the Horizon Europe model grant agreement. So I will try to give you details and relevant information as much as possible, but taking into account the time, of course, we have for that, and leaving enough time for Slido question afterwards. So we will start with the so-called corporate structure of Horizon Europe model grant agreement, so how it looks like, basically. this model grant agreement you will sign if your project is successfully retained for funding, and then you are at the end of the gap stage. Then we will focus on the type of participant that can be involved in the project. Then we will move to the personnel cost aspect, and especially the corporate, so-called corporate daily rate calculation, where my colleague Niklas from DG Budget will tell you more about that. Then I will take over again and present you the main features of the so-called project-based remuneration, which is a specific we have in Horizon Europe in terms of personnel cost eligibility aspect. And we will terminate this little trip together by a couple of words on the certificate and financial statement, so that you have a good overview of this main legal and financial aspect embedded in the model grant agreement for Horizon Europe. So let's get started with the basics, I would say, but which is very important, I think, to recall to all of you. I think you have heard already that from previous presentation, previous intervention from us, from the Commission, about this so-called corporate approach and corporate model grant agreement. So to cut it short, corporate, you can replace this figure of speech or this wording by Commission-wide model grant agreement, something to be used not only by one program, but model grant agreement or master file, master model grant agreement to be used as a basis by all EU program under direct management. And then these programs are, of course, able to customize a bit this master document and have it adapted for the needs of the specific policy objective they are pursuing. There will be three main corporate model grant agreement, three main master document, if you prefer. A so-called general corporate model grant agreement, which is actually the one I would say commonly in use so far when we finance a project, especially in Horizon, before Horizon 2020 and now in Horizon Europe. So what is it? It's basically the model grant agreement where we reimburse most of the cost on an actual cost basis. So you declare your actual cost and we apply a reimbursement rate on both actual cost. But you may have also embedded in this model grant agreement alongside the actual cost, some unit costs. For instance, I will give you a simple example. You may declare a cost of employee under actual cost, and you may have also for other employee or other categories, some people you declare via the so-called average personnel cost, which is a unit cost. And you see in the same action with this general model grant agreement, you will declare cost on an actual cost basis and on a unit cost basis. So this is why it's called a mixed budget-based mixed actual cost grant. Then we will rely on this corporate unit-based model grant agreement. So here, to illustrate this very quickly, it's basically the model grant agreement you will sign for Marie Sklodowska-Curie action. So fully based on unit contribution approach, living allowance, family allowance, and also new allowances introduced for Horizon Europe, like for the special needs of a researcher, for instance. So we will also rely on this corporate model grant agreement. We will have an Horizon Europe Marie Sklodowska-Curie unit-based model grant agreement. And there will be also good use, certainly an increased use of the so-called corporate lump sum based model grant agreement. So where here it's basically the continuity, the legacy, so to say, of what has been introduced in Horizon 2020, and which was the Horizon 2020 lump sum pilot model grant agreement, where we reimburse everything. So a global lump sum amount covering the whole action, split per work package and per beneficiary. So we will also rely on that. Just to give you an overview of the common structure of the Horizon Europe model grant agreement you will sign. So this corporate structure. I know time is limited, so I will not repeat what is written on this slide, but just I think main novelties that I should stress is certainly the introduction of this so-called data sheet. You can see on the left side of your screen, where you will have a summary of the specific data information of your grant agreement: duration, type of participant, budget aspect, reporting period, calendar, specific cost eligibility, budget cost category, activated or not in a given action. So you will have a pretty good overview of your main legal and financial aspects in the first pages of this model grant agreement. This is really, I think, a takeaway message, the main one you can keep with you from this slide. And then the structure would be, without entering into the details, somehow similar with the structure you already know for Horizon 2020. In terms of annexes, we will have also something very similar with what we had in Horizon 2020. Here, I would like just to focus on this so-called Annex 5 specific rules, where I was just mentioning this corporate commission-wide model grant agreement approach. Basically, if I summarize the things, the main area for customization for each EU program is this Annex 5, where we basically put our explicit policy-related provision that we want to have, of course, complied with by our beneficiaries. So for us, for Horizon Europe, it will be these big boxes on the right side. Everything speaking about security, ethics aspect, values, of course, intellectual property rights, communication, dissemination, and open science-related provision. And depending on the type of the Horizon Europe action, you will have specific rules also displayed in your Annex 5. So for public procurement, so pre-commercial procurement and PPI procurement, or co-funded partnership, or if you sign an ERC action, you will see a specific text dealing with specific provision with, for instance, notion of principal investigator. The same for the EIT KIC action, the same for Marie Curie action, and the same for EIC action. So this is really, I would say, the main area and the main place for reading and having a look at this very important policy-related obligation. If we continue with the structure and a little focus on the Annex 2, I will not repeat what is written, but maybe with this slide afterwards it will help you, because I know it's really small when you have a look at the model grant agreement on the participant portal, on the funding portal. No, it's very tiny, but you will see here all the different budget cost category. And of course, this budget cost category reflects the narrative part of the model grant agreement. So meaning the budget category which are listed under Article 6.2 onwards in the model grant agreement. So everything about personnel costs, about subcontracting, about this umbrella budget category purchase costs, where you have the travels and subsistence, the equipment, the other goods, works, and services, and other cost category you may also find in your model grant agreement. So it's normal that this Annex 2 fully reflect as a narrative part regarding financial cost eligibility aspect in your model grant agreement. So now I would like to give you a bit more information about the beneficiary and the participant in general, the type of participant in general involved in the action implementation. So we'll not spend too much time on this slide, but this slide is just a summary of type of participant involved in the action implementation. You have the beneficiary, of course, so meaning the legal entities that sign the model grant agreement, so either directly the coordinator, he co-signs, or via an accession form, you enter into the model grant agreement if you are a beneficiary and you are not the coordinator. And alongside to these signatory parties, you have third parties, because they are not signatory parties. So you have different type of third parties, and they are doing different things in the action implementation. And this is what we'll see together in the next slide. So the first block, if you want to summarize the thing, are the third parties carrying out work in the action. So really third parties that are doing also a part of the action task by themselves. So you have here three types of third parties doing action tasks by themselves: affiliated entities, associated partners, and subcontractors. And if we start with affiliated entities, I think now this notion you have started to get acquainted with, but to be very, very clear and short here, affiliated entities concept in Horizon Europe is exactly the same as the linked third parties concept in Horizon 2020. We have aligned the labeling, the definition within this so-called corporate context, as I was mentioning at the beginning of this presentation. So to have common wording, common labeling as much as possible, especially definition labeling stemming from the EU financial regulation. But it's exactly the same concept as the linked third-party concept in Horizon 2020. So basically, for those who are already familiar, they must be identified in the grant agreement. Their task as well must be mentioned in the Annex 1, and they have also to complete their budget line in the Annex 2. This has to be also reflected there. They follow the same cost eligibility criteria than for the beneficiary, and they are de facto treated like beneficiary in the sense that they have also to prepare their own financial statement, provide their own certificate and financial statement where applicable, some contribute to the technical reporting aspect, etc., etc. But of course, from an IT perspective, technical perspective, it will be the beneficiary to whom this affiliate entity is linked that will have to push the button, so to say, in the IT system. But they are like beneficiary, but not signing the grant agreement, and they are linked to a beneficiary. But I think you know quite well this affiliate entity / linked third party in Horizon 2020. Now, the associated partner concept. This is something that is certainly a bit new, at least the wording on the labeling, but it's inherited, so to say, from the international partner status, which has been introduced also in the course of the implementation of Horizon 2020. So it's a bit the legacy of this concept. It's also something that will be encountered or kind of a type of participant that can be also encountered or seen in other EU programs, because it will be a kind of corporate commission-wide labeling. And what they do, this associated partner, they perform action tasks, but they basically cannot declare cost. They can be linked to the whole consortium or to a particular beneficiary. I just understood that for technical reason, if they are linked to the consortium, they have actually to be linked to the coordinator from a technical perspective and IT perspective. But they can be linked to a particular beneficiary, and this can be reflected as such in the model grant agreement, a bit like the affiliated entity where you see the link to a given beneficiary. And the beneficiaries then must ensure that some relevant model grant agreement obligations are also passed on this beneficiary, extended to this associated partner. Can be through bilateral specific agreement or via the consortium agreement. It depends. This is really up to the consortium and to the beneficiaries to see what would be the most efficient or what kind of agreement is really better to capture this cascade of obligation to be observed and complied with by associated partner. So this is mentioned in my slide. It's all about the proper implementation, so obligation about the proper implementation of the action, notion of conflict of interest, confidentiality and security related obligation, ethics, visibility obligation, also these so-called specific rules for carrying out the action that will be further reflected in the Annex 5, actually. This Article 18 points to the Annex 5 of the model grant agreement. Things about information and things about record keeping, especially the technical implementation, because of course, associated partners are not declaring any cost. So this is what you have to keep in mind in terms of features attached to this associated partner kind of third party. Subcontracting, subcontractors. Here, it's basically continuity with Horizon 2020 in the sense that they also perform action tasks. And what you have what you beneficiary, when you subcontract a part of your action task, what you have to ensure is when you do that, you do that in compliance with best value for money or lowest price where it is appropriate, and you avoid conflict of interest. You know that also from Horizon 2020 that subcontracting between beneficiaries is not allowed. Also, generally speaking, except where there are exception cases or you have a framework agreement already in place, subcontracting to affiliates generally is not allowed either. So why is so? It's because mainly in that case, for instance, subcontracting between beneficiaries should be for each beneficiary to declare its own cost. And like this, we are fully respecting the sound financial management in the sense the model grant agreement will not cover any profit margin, which is not really justified because each beneficiary can really declare their actual cost, and there is no need to cover such a profit margins that may arise between in a subcontracting context. Their estimated cost and task of this subcontractor must also be identified in the budget. So to understand who does what, it's always the same concept, the same approach. If you have not mentioned this subcontractor or you have not expected to rely at the very beginning on subcontractors, you have also this continuity version 2020, a so-called simplify approval procedure. So meaning that at the reporting stage, you can explain that you have actually called on a subcontractor to perform some action task. But if you do that, you may bear the risk that the cost of the subcontracting is not accepted. So generally speaking, it's always better to discuss with your project officer to keep him or her informed about what is going on, and she will see, for instance, an amendment of the action is needed or not. But you have still this possibility to, so to say, have a simplified approval procedure if subcontracting was not initially foreseen. And of course, beneficiaries are responsible for the proper implementation of their third parties in general and also for their subcontractors. You have also other third parties. So this first chunk I just explained was really about third parties performing action tasks themselves by themselves per se, and you have also third parties who actually help the beneficiaries to perform their action task. And here, the way you can regroup these third parties is as follows. You have all third parties involved, so to say, in the notion of this umbrella cost category of purchase costs. So it's everything about the travel, accommodation, and subsistence related cost, the equipment cost, or other goods, works, and services related cost. For instance, you have examples there, everything about consumable and supplies or related to dissemination, protection of results can be covered by this other goods, work, and services cost category. So of course, you will rely on these third parties providing you with the service or the work or the good. So this is also something pure continuity, nothing new as compared to Horizon 2020. You can also still rely, also continuity of Horizon 2020, on in-kind contributors, and meaning really here people who give you something, for instance, second someone, provide you with an equipment or access to an equipment free of charge. This is really important, and I will just spend a little bit of time on this notion of in-kind contribution. Strictly speaking, now the in-kind contribution, and this is also to be fully in line with the financial regulation, it concerns in-kind contributor giving something to the beneficiary for the beneficiary to implement the action free of charge. We have still specific provision to have this eligible because it's a derogation from the financial regulation, and it's a derogation we have in our Horizon Europe legal base, in our Basic Act. And we continue basically with the approach in Horizon 2020 in the sense you declare the related in-kind contribution free of charge in the respective cost category, as if this cost was incurred by the beneficiary. If it concerns the secondment free of charge of an employee, you will declare this seconded employee free of charge in your personnel cost employee cost category if you are a beneficiary. On the other side, we will not have anymore this concept of in-kind contribution against payment per se. This will disappear in Horizon Europe. It's also a corporate approach, a common approach we will have across EU programs. But it doesn't mean you cannot continue to valorize, to declare the cost besides this former labeling of in-kind contribution against payment in Horizon 2020, and how and where you can continue to declare this cost. Basically under three cost categories, either, so it all depends what is at stake, what is covered by this in-kind contribution against payment. If we speak about the segment of a personnel against payment, you have a specific budget cost category in the budget table or in the financial statement for seconded person against payment. If it concerns an equipment against payment, it will have to be declared as renting cost for equipment. So in the equipment cost budget category. And if it concerns something else, for instance, a good or a service provided against payment, you will declare it under this C3 budget category for purchase of goods, works, and services. And on these categories, you will have, of course, the indirect cost flat rate that will be calculated automatically and will be counted. But this is what you have to keep in mind. There is no specific in-kind contribution against payment article, and this labeling has disappeared. But the way you declare the cost, besides, it's still possible. You have just to choose the right budget category as mentioned in this slide. After this, this focus on the third parties or participants involved in the action, now it's time to focus a little bit on the one key budget category, and I think it's certainly the most important one in most of the project, the one about personnel. And before giving the floor afterwards to my colleague Niklas, I will just mention briefly with this slide that, as you know already, and it was the case for them 2020, we will have still different categories for personnel, depending on the status or the relationship of the given person vis-à-vis the beneficiary. So it could be either employees, so people under an employment contract, or civil servant under an equivalent appointing act, or it can regard person under a direct contract or seconded person against payment, I was just mentioning, so category A2 and A3. Or we will still also have this possibility to declare, we will rely on the unit cost fixed by a commission decision to declare and valorize the personnel cost of SME owner and natural person which are involved as beneficiary in the action. So these will be the different budget categories for personnel you will see and under which you will have to correctly declare your related personnel cost depending on the status of the person. So now I think it's time for me to give the floor to my colleague Niklas, and then I will take over for the last slide. So Niklas, the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you, Julia. Hello, everybody. As Julia has presented in the beginning, we have now a commission-wide or corporate model grant agreement. And as part of this commission-wide approach, we have also, as you are probably very well aware by now, introduced a horizontal method for calculating actual personal costs for employees. So let's have a look at this first case that we have described in the previous slide, the employees with a fixed salaries. This is our commission-wide formula. Of course, you still have specific additions, like in the case of Horizon, project-based remuneration. But this basic case formula will be valid across programs. We have as a basis for this formula in our grant agreement, our famous daily rate based on a division of 215. And as you know, we have spent the last months drafting guidance on the practical implementation of this 215 daily rate through our annotated model grant agreement. This has been recently published, as you probably know. Next slide, please. Thank you. So for the drafting of the AGA, we have very focusedly looked into how to simplify the approach for the application of this 215 element in practice, meaning how do we apply these formulas for reporting periods that are more or less than a year? How do we reduce the number of mandatory calculations? How can we reduce the number of specific calculations needed? And how do we avoid over-declaration of days, which could also be a case of prohibition of double funding if you work in multiple actions. We came up, and that you can see in our recently published new version of the draft AGA, with a single approach that works over any period of months, be it the full calendar year, be it a 3-month edition, be it the usual 18 months reporting period. In all of these cases, we will work with a consistent pro rata of the 215. We will use a single calculation for reporting period now. This is probably the most important simplification and change vis-a-vis the previous draft version. We have considered that we as granting authority actually do not need you to require to do this calculation for each calendar year within an 18 months reporting period, which can very easily be already 3 different calculations plus extra cases, changes of circumstances. So we have slashed the number of mandatory calculations considerably to usually a single calculation per reporting period. Then we have come up to put all of this in a single formula that integrates all horizontal cases. And we have limited the declarable day equivalents to, again, the pro rata of 215 that will stay always in proportion to the reporting period. So for a full year reporting period, you will have the 215. And for 18 months, you will have a pro rata of the 215. So for 18 months, we may have 222.5 declarable day equivalents. So we always stay consistently within the logic of the pro rata of 215 over any and all situations that you encounter during your action. Could we go one slide further? Yes. So the result of all of this is our single formula here that is an approach that we believe covers most of the situations encountered by beneficiaries in our actions. The personal cost will be calculated by the day equivalence times the daily rate, as is the element in our grant agreement. You can declare day equivalence up to the pro rata of 215 during your reporting period, and divide this and multiply this by the daily rate, which is again divided by the maximum declarable day equivalence. So also here we have introduced a common factor. So we always work everywhere with a pro rata of 215, which results in this maximum declarable day equivalence. One slide further, please. The calculation of the day equivalence, which is, I think, the major addition to the new AGA version, is relatively straightforward. We use our consistent pro rata of 215, which you see everywhere now. You multiply it by the number of months within the reporting period, be it 3, be it 18, be it 12. And that you multiply again with the working time factor, be it 1 for full-time or 0.5 for 50% part-time. With this single formula, you can address, as we believe, most of the situations that you would encounter quite easily, and the same number will be your basis for calculating the amount of the daily rate. Next slide, please. Just to show you by way of example how we apply it in the case where we have a reporting period from the 1st of January 2022 to end of March 23, where we have a salaried employee working in full-time in 22 and then changing to part-time for the last 3 months. You would very simply, again, calculate for the full-time work part, your pro rata of 215, multiply it by the number of months, which would be 12 months in full-time, multiply it by the working time factor, which is 1 for full-time, 215. So that is our basic standard element. And the same you do for the 3 months in part-time. You have our consistent pro rata that we use everywhere now, times the number of months, which is 3, times the working time factor for 50% part-time is 0.5. So for your reporting period from the 1st of January to end of March the following year, you could declare up to 242 maximum day equivalents that you also use to as a denominator for your calculation of the daily rate, meaning that after declaring 242 day equivalents in that period, you would have reached your complete potential incurable personal cost for this person. And that's it. Julia, next slide. And I'm giving back to you with that one.
So for this one, just give me 1 second. That's it. So here it's all about record keeping. So what you have to keep to justify your number of day equivalent for a given person spent on the action implementation. So here, two possibilities basically. Either you sign a monthly declaration, and there is a commission template available for that. So it contains minimum requirement. It has not so much items therein, but it's still something that shows enough information and reliable information regarding the day equivalent spent by a given individual in a given month in the action implementation. So you can use this monthly declaration. You can use this template if you wish so. Or if you have already something in place, a time recording system in place, you want to keep it, a reliable one, you can of course keep it, you can of course continue with it, be it something on paper, be it something computer-based, doesn't matter. You can of course continue with what you have if it is reliable and it works for you. So no obligation to switch and use this monthly declaration, only if you wish so. This is something available, offered to you beneficiaries. Continuing now with one specific aspect in personnel costs for Horizon Europe. So I know time is running, so I will try to be very brief. There will be just one slide on that, but it's just to say that we have a different calculation of the cost for the specific case of people receiving a so-called project-based remuneration. So what is a project-based remuneration? It is it reflects the remuneration practices of a legal entity where basically you give to your personnel a supplementary payment because this is a triggering event that justifies the supplementary payment. This person works in a project. You have an example on the left side of the slides. For instance, you give a bonus or you sign a new contract with a higher salary level when this person is involved in a project. And basically, what we have in place is a ceiling, is a capping approach, so to say, that your project-based remuneration, so what you pay as project-based remuneration to someone, will be eligible up to the remuneration, to the project-based remuneration that this person, this individual would have received for work in research and innovation project funded by your national scheme. And this is what we call the national project daily rate. So basically, and this is the right part of the slide, we ask you to calculate your action daily rate and to compare it with the so-called theoretical national project daily rate. And you have to take the lower of the two. And then you declare accordingly your personnel cost for the space. I insist on that for the specific case of people receiving a project-based remuneration. So note the general case just mentioned and presented by Niklas. So this is specific steps, specific calculation you have to do, and we will of course capture here what is and reflect here what has been put in the Horizon Europe Basic Act. These specific rules, what you have in the model grant agreement, is fully reflected what is in the Horizon Europe Basic Act about project-based remuneration. So just one last thing to mention, where you define in general your national project daily rate, so the amount, project-based remuneration amount you are giving to people when they work in research innovation project funded by your national schemes, it's either something mentioned in regulatory requirements, so could be the national law, could be your collective labor agreement, or maybe you have something, you have written internal remuneration rules, so endorse in your institution, and speaking about this project-based remuneration. Maybe it's not called project-based remuneration. It's not an issue if the concept and what is covered by these written internal remuneration rules is what I just explained. It's fully fine for us. The labeling does not matter, but you have to have something. If you have absolutely nothing, I will not explain now today, but you can go to the AGA, which is published even as a pre-draft. We will have a so-called fallback option for people, institutions who have nothing in their national law, nothing in their written internal remuneration rules, or things which are not based on objective condition. There is still a possibility to calculate a national project daily rate. So we try to cover all possible cases to keep it short. So this is what it is, and this is how you will have to declare this project-based remuneration related personnel cost if you have any in your institution. Now, finishing on something also important to mention, the certificate on financial statement. So here, things to have in mind is basically we will continue with the fact that we will ask this only at the payment of the balance. So in terms of justification, this will be due only at payment of the balance. It's already the case in Horizon 2020. But the basis for calculation and the threshold triggering the obligation to submit this so-called CFS will be a bit higher, and the basis will be the requested EU contribution calculated on all costs. So not only on the actual cost and unit cost based on your usual accounting practices, as it was the case in Horizon 2020. So bear this in mind, this information, so this threshold and this basis for calculation, and when you have to submit it, so at the end of the action, at the last reporting period, this is something mentioned, for instance, in the datasheet. When I was speaking about that at the beginning of my presentation, this is a kind of key information which is also reflected and mentioned in your first pages of your model grant agreement. One thing to have in mind, without entering into details, for beneficiaries with a so-called system and process audit, a SPA, without entering into the details, if after this thorough audit, if you prefer, to keep it short, you request for it and then the auditors grant it, if they grant it and they go on the spot, they discuss with you and then they realize this thorough system and process audit and you get a low risk classification, it will come with benefits, and the benefits will be as follows. Either it will reduce, let's say, the thoroughness of any ex post audit that you may encounter, or it will increase, and it will increase in any case the threshold for submitting your CFS. So basically, you see if you increase the threshold, normally the result, the positive result, because you get this low risk classification, is for the rest of the action, or certainly a lot of the action you will continue to apply. In Horizon Europe, you will not have to submit a CFS, because by increasing this quite significantly the threshold, normally you will be exempted in a larger number of cases. So this is the positive benefit you can get, notably with this SPA and low risk classification. Just to conclude now, this is my last slide. Of course, I'm pretty sure you know this place, so the funding and tender portal, but just to tell you that everything is there, notably the so-called reference documents. So if you are looking for more information and what is exactly written in this model grant agreement or in the template for application, etc., for instance, go to this page, of course, selection the Horizon Europe program, and then click on the plus button, and you will it will expand all the available document, and then you can have a look. And I think it's really the place to go if you want to see exactly how things have been written and displayed. So this will be my last word of advice, and now it concludes this presentation.
Thank you very much, Nicolas, Julien. As I said before, this was a recorded presentation, but now for the questions, we have here, I think, Julien and at least Isabelle Leroy is here. They are both lawyers in the Common Legal Service. And we have plenty of questions for you. We have about 15 minutes. Let's start with the first one. In case of a financial audit, it is mandatory to show original timesheets as paper documents, or a digital archive is enough?
So if you having digital or digitalized document is authorized as per your national legislation, it will be completely enough to keep this digital or digitalized document. You don't need to keep a hard copy or a paper document.
Model grant agreement ready, the final version.
So we aim for having something, let's say, more close to a full-fledged document the course of this year. So by the end of this year, in the course of this year, We cannot commit more today because it's a corporate document, meaning it involves several commission services, and takes more time to come up with a corporate document covering not only the Horizon Europe program, but also the program.
As a personal month efforts have, if a working day has 7.7 hours in a company?
I can maybe start on that one. So we should first clarify that what concerns personal months does not belong to the calculation of personal costs and what you do to report your personal costs. Differently, person months are a notion that is used when you are reporting on your effort. That means in the technical part of the periodic reporting. And here, what you use to calculate your personal month is not defined by us, and it depends on your usual practices.
Thank you, Isabel. If charging average personnel costs, usual accounting practice, is it possible to use the actual productive days of the beneficiary instead of 215 days?
So average personal cost is a specific way of charging personal cost. And I first wish to say that you can only use it if it's the accounting practice of the beneficiary to use average rates in its accounting, and to use them in a consistent manner or based on the actual cost, actually. Now, if your usual practice is to have an hourly rate, as we have explained in the presentation, you need now under Horizon Europe to report on the basis of daily rate. So convert your hourly rate, which corresponds to your usual accounting practices, in a daily rate. Either you can use the multiplication by 8, corresponding to 8 hours per day, or if you do have standard annual productive hours, you may use this, but you first need to check if the standard number of annual productive hours is not too low. That means it should be at least 90% of the workable annual hours, which corresponds to the number of hours you must work according to work contract. And then you use this either your standard annual workable hours or 90% of the workable hours, whichever is higher. And you can divide this by 215 to know which number of hours per day you can use for your conversion, meaning to multiply your hourly rate by this number. And sorry for it.
Thank you, Isabel. We have some technical problems with your sound. It's going up and down, so it's difficult to follow you 100%. Next question. Can we transfer funds between personnel costs and other direct costs? When do we need to do an amendment? From which amount?
So I can take this one if you want. Basically, the principle is that there is quite a full flexibility in terms of budget transfer, or if you prefer, when you have an increase of expenditure and a decrease of expenditure compared to in two budget categories. Now there are, let's say, some limitation or exception. For instance, for the case of subcontracting, if you increase the amount of subcontracting as compared to what was foreseen at proposal stage, the budget, this normally requires an amendment. You may have an ex post system approval, so if you justify it at the time of the reporting. But I would say, to be on the safe side, especially when you have quite a significant difference in terms of amount between different cost categories as compared to your budget, it's always better to liaise and discuss with your project officer and to see whether an amendment is really needed to better capture and maybe update your budget table.
Thank you, Julien. Next question is from Maria Sanchez. To what extent the research table must fit the cost claim? For example, do we need to list every person expending time in the project or just the relevant person?
Here, I don't know if colleagues who already made presentation on the researchers table can come in, but I would say it's financial reporting is something else, and then for the researcher table it's another thing, because I understand that it's something really focused for researcher. Then when you declare personnel costs, you can touch upon different kind of categories of people, actually, not only researcher. So there is no mandatory correspondence between these two aspects. The researcher table per se tracking better the career of researcher involved in our youth-funded action versus declaring your personnel costs from a financial perspective. So no correlation is so much expected.
Thank you. Can we include a bonus that will be paid out during the project period but is reflecting performance of a previous year?
So I can start with that one. So a bonus for personal cost can fall maybe in the category of personal cost under variable complement, but you have to make sure that it complies with certain conditions, notably that the bonus is paid in accordance with objective conditions, which are reflected at least in internal rules of the beneficiary, and also that they're paid in a consistent manner, is not only, for example, for the Horizon Europe actions. And then certain bonuses are not eligible. That's notably if they are related to commercial targets or fundraising targets, because that's not something that is related to the action. And also if they are based on, depend on availability of funds. If it's not something that is certain according to your.
Next question related to this one. What if the reporting period is 14 months? Can you then include 2 times the yearly bonus?
So this is related to the condition that costs must be incurred during the duration of the action. And also that for personal costs, you're going to report costs based on the cost incurred during the reporting period. So to know what costs you're going to put in your pool of costs for the reporting period, it depends on your usual accounting practices. So if a bonus is, according to your practices, accrued twice in the reporting period of 14 months, and this corresponds to your usual practices, it could possibly be counted twice. And if your accounting practices depend on the moment when it's paid, that's the moment where you register the accounts. If the bonus is also, for instance, paid twice, then it could possibly be counted twice in the same reporting period. The basic message here is that you must really comply with your usual cost accounting practices to register personal costs.
Please be briefed. Will a monthly daily rate be added in a new version to enable better consistency with Horizon 2020 projects running in parallel, sometimes with the same personnel?
No, so far it's not expected to have another, let's say, option or possibility to declare your personnel cost. What was done was to, especially something that we discussed quite recently, to have one single calculation, one single daily rate calculation to be done per reporting period, so based on the reporting period duration, to try to cope with different situation and having no discrepancies between what you have in your account and the methodology we ask you to follow when you declare your personnel cost. But I think so far the single corporate approach will be really just to be done per reporting period, and there is nothing expected like having an extra different calculation like we have in Horizon 2020 with the annual and the monthly.
Thank you.
Should really go single daily rate.
Thank you, Julien. They have changed the order. Latest version of the annotated model grant agreement indeed mentions 1 daily rate per person per reporting period. MGA still mentions annual. Will MGA be updated?
No, actually what we did was to explain that when you have a reporting period which is longer than an annual duration, than 12 months. That is quite often our case in Horizon Europe for most of our projects, but not for, it does not really happen in other programs. Sometimes they have this annual reporting period. So we have developed explanation to cover reporting period longer than annual duration, but we will not go so far for changing the wording as such, because it doesn't prevent this wording from a mere legal perspective to have this interpretation and explanation in VIAGA when you have a reporting period duration over 12 months. So far, we will keep this annual reference to the HGA, but still you will find a way, I think, in VIAGA explanation where we explain everything about the maximum declarable day equivalent concept, which was just presented, when you have reporting period with different duration as compared to an annual.
Last two questions. Is it possible to hire an employee with a fixed salary, for example, for 5.5 days or 44 hours per month for the duration of the project?
So hiring an employee, don't see an issue with the question here. The only thing which is not quite clear, if the person will only have a working time according to its employment contract of 44 hours per month. This could be taken into consideration when you calculate the personal costs, when in the formula you have to integrate the working factor, which corresponds to the working pattern. You would just have to calculate which is the percentage that 44 hours per month represent compared to a full-time employee. And if it's differently, just the person, the employee is working these number of hours on the action, in any case, it's only the hours worked on the action that can be charged to the project, and this is reflected in the record, the daily records, or if you don't have the declaration for the daily records, your timesheets.
Thank you, Isabel. Last question. Does the increase in cost category DA financial support to third parties need an amendment?
I can start on that one. So the word increase seems to imply that this category was already foreseen, and that's already something different than if it was not foreseen at all in the action, because to have financial support to third parties, it has to be specified in the call, and it has to be integrated in the grant agreement. If there is an increase, it's presumable, but to be checked with the project officer, that this would correspond to a change in the description of the action, because this is the criteria to know if you need an amendment or not. So I think in this type of case, it's best practice really to check with your project officer, but it's likely presenting a change that requires amendment.
Thank you very much, Isabel, Julien. I want to thank, we have to close now, it's 13 hours. I want to thank all the speakers and the people who have supported during the question time. I would like to thank also the persons who are here in the RTD studio taking care of the technical part. Is Bea Deprez, Francesco Vega, and Olivier Margan. Behind Slido, there was Dominika Kotovic. Thank you all, and very special thanks actually to all of you who have been following us today since 9:30. I wish you a very nice lunch and hope to see you in the next webinar. Thank you very much. Bye.